Welcome to the big show. Well. It's the Hoops Boys podcast with your
Yes,
host
it
with the
is.
most, James the Jet, and America's favorite bitch ass white boy, CProc. Well, GM LeBron is back with a vengeance, putting on his little executive cap there. And if it wasn't enough to get the band back together, getting his a former title contributor of his back, Dwight Howard, and a title contributor to Tinseltown of old back, Trevor Ariza, he's got to drive it up to a whole nother stratosphere. They pull off the blockbuster on draft night, bring in the new Mr. Triple Double himself, Los Angeles native Russell Westbrook, probably thrilled to be back playing back home for a major team. And then they sign in very useful veterans, Malik Monk, Kent Bazemore, and Kendrick Nunn. Malik Monk, I think, is someone that was always underutilized in Charlotte a little bit.
Mhm.
Kent Bazemore, someone that never really was utilized much at all.
Yeah,
So, and bring back Young and Taylor Horton Tucker. And the
good.
cherry on top, of course, is bringing in a long time Braun BFF, Carmelo Anthony, ready to
Mm.
chase rings with his old draft classmate and his Olympic partner. Jet, what's the vibe on this talent binge the Lakers pulled off?
Um, like most LeBron teams, I feel like they get away with murder when it's time to build, build a super team. Not only do they have two of the, quote unquote top five players in the league in LeBron and AD, they have now added, like you said, Mr. Triple Double himself, Russell Westbrook. It's not a natural fit for them because, you have two wing players that can't really shoot like that. And LeBron and Russ, they can hit them, but they're not like striping them from deep or anything like that. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. But they did add many players on their team that shot 40 or better from 3-point land. Malik Monk, Ken Bazemore, and also Carmelo Anthony. Taylor Horton Tucker is going to be. I wonder who's going to start in this whole. Their starting lineup is going to be. I read a lot that LeBron is welcoming playing the four and AD's playing the five. With Dwight Howard being there, I don't know if they're going to start him or bring him off their bench like they did when they won the chip last year. Trevor Ariza, I always like Trevor. He's a person that comes in and does his job. He's going to play defense hard and he's going to knock down his open threes. So I think they did pretty good. Everybody's talking about their age. They have a lot of players that are in 30 plus. So we'll see. The league is different now. Players take care of their bodies a lot more. You see how well LeBron's playing at his advanced age. Carmelo Anthony is also 37. He's playing pretty well for his age. So we'll see. I think they put themselves in the position to be title contenders again. Because last year that talent that they added, it just wasn't gelling, it wasn't working, and they just did a whole overhaul and got Russell Westbrook out of it. So
I
pretty impressive.
think I think it's definitely a max 2 year window, maybe even a 1 year window. I mean, this could be an all in on 2022 and then the wheels
Yeah.
fall off. But I think to your point on Dwight Howard, definitely think Dwight Howard would probably not serve them well starting. He would be more coming off the bench because, like you said, there's a lot of beef. That's a lot of beef already, especially if LeBron's going to move up. If he does it, obviously he's not going to move up the starting lineup if Dwight's playing because you've got two centers
Yeah.
effectively, and that's just a lot of two centers that don't really shoot. I mean, Anthony Davis can hit his threes, of course, but
Mhm.
that's not like his. I've never felt like that's his most effective. When he's most effective on the floor,
Yeah.
he needs to be bullying people.
Yeah. Pinch
And
post, playing
yes,
out of the block. Yeah.
and that starting Dwight Howard would just be too much. Plus, LeBron does so many things in the post. It's really that we always joked about in the past how Carmelo can do anything in the post.
Mhm.
Or at least when he came into the league, he used to be able to unguardable type of quick player in the post and too big for perimeter players down there.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, that we never really got that, and then we never really got to see that from Carmelo truly over the long haul of his career. Whereas LeBron does go down the post and bully smaller players and stand up against big guys and can go quick around them.
Yeah.
So for him to need to operate down there and AD to need to do what he needs to do, Russie needs to get into the paint to get to the basket. That's obviously where he's most effective.
Yeah.
It's starting to go out would just be too much for me. And as far as this all relates to what their starting lineup is going to be, it's weird because it's just a strange mix of on-court skills and personality to work the way we've seen super teams work in the past.
Yeah.
So more power to them if they could pull it off. Like if they could have this slightly younger Boston Celtics of old mentality where so many stars come together, all go for the chip, and then that's it. But I also don't know if Kevin Garnett, Rayon, and Paul Pierce were a slightly older and really starved for rings. LeBron's got rings. AD has a ring now. Russell Westbrook's been to the finals before. He's been on other teams that he's carried to far levels in the playoffs. Or even just getting teams that were garbage getting to the playoffs at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is it? I not as confident in seeing this group of personalities together as with LeBron and the Heat, or the Boston Celtics, or Durant going to the Warriors, or who knows what's going to happen with this Nets trio, I don't know if I don't have the same type of confidence with this bunch that I did with those ones.
I get you. And then another thing, Lakers always hung their hat on defense. They lost a really good perimeter defender in Alex Caruso. But they did KCP as well. So they're going to take a little hit on perimeter defense, but you still have, Russell's not I wouldn't consider him a lockdown defender, but he's not a slouch. He can play defense when he wants to. You still have AD and LeBron. Trevor Ariza plays D. Taylor Horton-Tucker could be a really good two-way player. He has a lot of energy. We know Malik
Russie gets into it, but he gambles.
Yeah, he gambles a lot. Ken Bazemore is a solid defender. It's gonna be and also Dwight. You already know what Dwight's gonna do on the defensive end. He's gonna go out there and touch people up, interrupt what teams are trying to do offensively. So they should be okay. They definitely got really better on offense. They're gonna be able to space out the floor, play 5 out, and just have Russell or LeBron run pick and roll with AD and then pick teams apart. You know what I'm saying? And then, but to
your point about them being weak on the perimeter and all these other players you mentioned as people to pick up the gaps there, they're all reserves.
Right.
Like AD is obviously a wonderful defender, but he's in the post. AD's not going to come out and guard point guard.
No.
So if it's really hinging on Russie becoming more of a gambler, more than just a gambler, and being a lockdown defender, because you can't have LeBron guarding. With all the elite teams in the league right now are looking at have at least one elite perimeter offensive talent, and many of them have two. So it's hard. You can't ask LeBron the entire game to guard one, let alone whoever the second person is.
No, I get that 100%. But it's definitely going to be very interesting to see. LeBron, I think he's going to be if we get the Russell Westbrook of when he was on the Thunder with PG, the second year, I want to say, when he was kind of he was controlling the game, but he took more of a backseat to scoring. He was letting PG do his thing on the scoring the ball and all that. I think that's the best version of Russell Westbrook. If he was able to do that with KD, they probably would have had a couple of chips.
They were right on the cusp of that.
Yeah, they were right there. If he can switch that mindset on with this team, I think it's going to be very dangerous because LeBron is a good scorer, AD's a good scorer, and then they have a bunch of shooters that they can plug and play. Kent Bazemore is not hot tonight. Let's try Malik Monk. Malik Monk's not hot tonight. Let's put in Carmelo. You know what I'm saying? And they can like pick and choose like, oh, they're a little small down low on their bench is a little small. Let's put Melo in and have him like just put all their smaller people in the post and dog them that way. You know what I'm saying? And we kind of seen Melo do that in Portland. But I wonder how they're going to utilize him in this offense. Are they going to let Melo be Melo as far as like let him get some touches in the post, or he's going to be strictly just standing on the 3-point line like how he was with the Rockets? And we've seen like that didn't really work, but he has become a very good spot up shooter with his 2 years with Portland. I don't know. I kind of like this mix of players though. I think they did okay. Time will tell. We know the Brow loves to get injured. That's like his favorite thing to do. But if he's able to stay healthy, if they're able to stay healthy, like damn near all the teams in the NBA, but if the Lakers are able to stay healthy and go to the finals, they should be able to make some noise.
And if the listeners couldn't tell, yes, I'm still bitter about not being able to see a full dynasty wave from that original Thunder Big Three.
Yeah. Well, I think we we covered the Lakers. There's another team on the Eastern Conference I want to speak about. El Heat, as the Latin night jerseys portray. They brought back some old faces, like Jimmy Butler. They let Kendrick Nunn walk. He's now on the Lakers, ironically. But they also brought in some new talent with Kyle Lowry. Let's unpack this, CProc. How do we feel about the Miami Heat? I think this is one team to me that did a really good job in the offseason. I love Bam Adebayo, I love Jimmy Butler, and for them to add another savvy veteran like Kyle Lowry, he can hit big threes. He's not a slouch on the defensive end. I think they did pretty well in the offseason.
I do too. I like what they did a lot, and I mean, just getting Lowry is a huge enough deal as it is, because point guard for them recently, nothing against Goran Dragic, but his best days were really behind him.
Yeah, I agree.
And the Vic acquisition could have worked, but it couldn't kick the injury risk in time to really get something together last year. Had a quick flame out in the postseason, but good on them for bringing back Jimmy Buckets.
Yeah, for sure.
It's legit. Jimmy Butler is a very tough-minded and kind of an unsung NBA star nowadays. Despite the fact that he's got those big commercials now, he still doesn't have that like flash that you think of with the other superstars of today. But I mean, he could score with the best of them. He's a very tough defender. He's a gritty player. He doesn't seem like it. Maybe, I mean, he might have a big head on for all I know, but it certainly doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But good on them for bringing him back, because he's definitely worth maybe not building around for a long term, but building around for this short window to try and get a championship down there. And granted, all criticism aside from the bubble experience, they still got to the finals with him. They still had a full playoff run to go through, and he was consistent throughout that entire thing. Lowry, I can't say anything negative about that. Kyle Lowry is someone who's proven winner, been on multiple long playoff stretch teams. He's won a championship. He's come up big in the finals. So Kyle Lowry, there's nothing negative I could say about getting him. And again, same thing with Jimmy Butler. Kyle Lowry's not something you want to build around with for a long-term thing, but for this short 3-4 year window, that's perfect. One of those guys you got to go for. Vic is kind of now because of getting Lowry. I think bringing back Vic is kind of just a throw-in. Vic is not gonna, if he gets hurt again, he's not gonna derail you. He's not gonna derail them. But I think that if he's healthy, him being there is going to do nothing but help them. He doesn't have to worry about starting. Come off the bench. Doesn't even necessarily have to be a sixth man. He can just be like the seventh man. He could play. They could probably limit him to 15 minutes a night, if that, early on, to make sure he's fresh,
Yeah.
I love that they brought back Duncan Robinson. Not someone that probably gets a lot of love there, but the first time I saw him was a Christmas game last year. I didn't know who this kid was. And he's just throwing up threes like nothing. I'm like, okay, this is a long, lanky kid that can hit threes. Okay. So
Yeah.
I think that's a big time contributor to bring back. To bring in Markieff Morris, big beefy type of forward to kind of throw some elbows around, rough people up a little bit. I like that. Well, I guess that must be the old school Knicks fan in me. Like you guys getting beat up a little bit.
Right.
But I think Markieff Morris is a great acquisition for them. I suppose his brother was more of a shooter.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you said, Bam, phenomenal center, great star. He's fresh off a gold medal run with Team USA. The only concern of me with Bam is that because of the Olympic run, because of how late the season went, of course, not that late for them because they were out in the first round. That's sad. I'm worried about a little bit I might be a little worried with fatigue with Bam. So maybe Markieff Morris, maybe, any other kind of bigs that got stashed on the bench there can kind of alleviate some minutes for him early on to make sure he's fresh for the long haul. Because certainly if Bam's not healthy, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
And the only other concern I would say is what's going on in Tyler Hero's head.
Yeah.
He's all his marbles together. I mean, he's one, again, helping out the Vic thing. He doesn't need to be the sixth man necessarily because Tyler Hero could be the sixth man. Especially with Lowry being there. Tyler Hero doesn't need to start. And I think it probably sends a message from the organization to Tyler Hero, the fact that they got Lowry and didn't trade Tyler Hero because they were like, we're not giving up on you. We just need you to get right. And that might send a message to him like, okay, I need to embrace this role. I need to realize that I can't be this hot out my mouth type of player. I think if he can get his head right, I think that's going to be a great role for him, and he's really going to be a good contributor for them. And of course, they bring in everyone's favorite goon from the finals, PJ Tucker.
Yeah, that's a good pickup for them for sure.
So someone else, to my point about Bam being fatigued, another big body that can help alleviate some of Bam's minutes maybe in the early going.
Yeah, they have a good balance with spacing. They're a team that I think that could play 5 out. I really like that they brought back Vic because it's a low risk, high reward. Because, like you said, if he gets back to the Vic that we know and love, they're going to be very dangerous in that Eastern Conference. They got a good balance of defense, shooting, hard, tough players, and we already know like their coaching pedigree over there, A1 coach. So I think that he did a really good job in this offseason, trying to beef up their team to make another run at a championship.
Speaking of their coaching staff, I was looking at their roster the other day, and their coaching staff is like all these old forlorn college stars of old. Caron Butler from UConn, Chris Quinn from Notre Dame, Malik Allen. Yeah. It's like what's Eric Spoelstra was not like this as great coach as he is. He was not this like well-known player or anything. He's got like 3 well-known players on his bench.
Nah, he knows what's up.
Yeah. I just thought that was funny to say. Now, the third big winner, as we could size it up from this offseason so far, is maybe a triumphant return to prominence, or maybe finally, because they've certainly tried a couple times in the past, of the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I mean, just start lining up the trophies with Alex Caruso. That should be enough. I mean, that's like Michael Jordan incarnate, right?
Right. Is that White Mike?
White Mike, yes. Taking that. Jason Williams can't hold on to the white chocolate nickname anymore, I don't think. But obviously I'm kidding a little bit. They brought in this brand new shiny backcourt. They get a defensive and a passing stud like Lonzo Ball, who probably wants just a fresh start in general from his New Orleans time in New Orleans. DeMar DeRozan's my birthday buddy, is a grizzled veteran. They bring him into the Windy City, and he's probably desperate right now to get some kind of championships because he saw the Raptors go and win right after he left, right after they sent him away.
That was sad.
And then he goes to the Spurs, a team that is certainly not shy of long playoff runs and winning, and were pretty awful in his time there. So
Yeah.
he's probably desperate for he's someone that he's a perimeter player that could do a lot. He can get in a little bit on D. Not saying he's going to lock down defender or anything, but I think he can get into it a little bit. And he could shoot. Not a great shooter, but mid-range game.
Mid-range game is good.
He could get to the basket. So I think DeMar DeRozan's got to be pretty starved for a chance to win, and playing in a small market in San Antonio, playing in a non-American market in Toronto all those years. He's also now got a big spotlight in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And I would have to think that there's going to be a lot of motivation now with the Bulls. And what, in your eyes, did they shoot themselves up the rankings, or are they still kind of middling around the play-in tournament area, or maybe that 5th, 6th zone?
I honestly think I like the moves that they made in this offseason. DeMar DeRozan, a skill that he gained from playing with the Spurs that he didn't have so much on the Raptors is Pop put the ball in his hands a lot to be like the main playmaker. And he can bring that to the Windy City and have Lonzo play off the ball sometimes, you know what I'm saying, spot up and shoot. We see Lonzo get better from 3-point range last season, and I think that's going to continue this season. They have 2 high flies now with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine with a hell of a pass and Lonzo Ball. I think this team is going to be must-see TV. And then to throw in, they have Vucevic just chilling, you know what I'm saying? He's still there, and it's still up in the air what's going to happen with Lauri Markkanen. I heard some rumors that he wants out, but maybe they might keep him until midseason and then move him. But this team is going to be a lot better than they were last year. I won't consider them world beaters, but they're going to be, I think they still could be a middle of the pack team. You got to see how they play together. They're going to be good defensively as well. I don't know. I like the moves they made. Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso on the perimeter. DeMar DeRozan.
That's a good point on Vucevic too. I completely forgot about him. That was such a big acquisition in midseason this past year. Yeah,
we really didn't get to see. I didn't watch much Bulls games last season, but I didn't really get to see that many Bulls games with him, ingratiated in the offense and stuff. And now with a player like Lonzo and Vuce could do everything on the floor. He could shoot. He could play in a post. I think it's gonna be fireworks over there. I almost guarantee that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you have a good point on Markkanen's gauge where he is at the trade deadline, because who knows? I mean, the only Bulls he's known so far is pretty awful Bulls.
Yeah.
Awful Bulls.
The ABs.
And maybe having all this talent, if they're all motivated and they start get out of the gates hot, maybe he'll be motivated too and want to play for. Yeah. But if he's not and he's still going to be sour on the bench, then it's best to get him out as soon as possible, so you don't create a toxic locker room situation.
Yeah, but even if I'm Lauri Markkanen and I see like, I have a legit playmaker in Lonzo Ball now that can get me the ball in my spots, and with all this talent around me, I'm going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities or wide open shots. And if you're a shooter, you know what I'm saying? What more do you want? You know what I mean? I don't know if he wants to be like considered like the 1A on the team. You know what I'm saying? Like he's getting 20-something shots a game, but it's like you can go do that and lose. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody's going to, you know what I mean? What team are you going to go to and be like the main guy? Like even like Detroit and the Rockets, they've gotten better in the draft. So it's like, I don't see you going anywhere and being like the number one player.
Yeah. Although if he did go to the Rockets, that would create quite the potential 1-2 with Jalen Green.
Yeah, for sure. But we'll see. We'll see, man. I'm excited to see what they're going to do this season. The East is getting stronger, man.
East is back.
East is back.
Definitely. I think that's definitely true. I think Milwaukee did the East a big favor by winning the title this year.
No, they did. And you look at the East, right? Like
I think Indiana's a lot tougher.
Indiana's going to be a lot tougher. The Hawks are going to come back stronger. You know what I'm saying? The Nets are going to come back. If the Nets are healthy, like they have the capability of running through the league. You know what I'm saying? Like every team is smoking them by 20. You know what I'm saying? They have the capability of doing that, but
they're
Bulls got
capable.
better.
They're capable of doing that even if Kyrie does go on a sabbatical and disappear.
Hey. We're gonna talk about it later, but they done, you know, they got their Kyrie insurance.
Yes, they did. Yes, they
did.
Yeah. Now we've talked a lot about veteran acquisitions. Come on back, and we'll bring in College Insider Greg to break down who came up huge and who flopped big time in the draft a few weeks ago. Don't forget, kids, follow, shoot us your thoughts, Instagram and Twitter at HoopsPlaysPod, and stick it right here. We're talking about the incoming rookie class. Hoops Plays Podcast. Keep it with us.
Welcome back, ladies and gents, to the Hoops Boys Pod. It is your host with the most, Jet, and my boy CProc.
Woo!
We got another Hollywood Square with us. My boy Gregors is back to help us run out this segment. So I'm gonna get right into it. Greg, how do you feel? What team do you feel was the winners from this year's draft? Hornets, Pacers, Rockets, anybody that you can think of other than them that came out clean in this year's draft?
Well, I think I was going to say Houston. I thought Houston did do a great job. I know you just mentioned them. I thought they were awesome. I know we're going to touch that. I think the Knicks didn't do much, which was a good thing. I think the fact that they kept trading down, kept flexibility. I liked what they did. I think in general, like I said, I just get to Houston. I think they were the slam dunk. I know you guys spoke on them, but I just really did. I thought obviously Jalen Green, he brings in that immediate go-to scorer, which they've obviously kind of lost with Harden. And I mean, I felt they had solid picks up and down. So for me, that was what I came out of the draft. Like they really, I thought, set themselves in the right direction. I thought that was a great move.
And how about for like if you had to pick a second team? So let's do like a ranking system. Houston's number one. Let's do the top three teams that probably did well. Who would be your second choice?
I'd have to go, and it's actually not just because of my bias toward Book Knight, but I thought Charlotte did a great job as well. I thought getting Book Knight, I thought at 11 was an absolutely great move. You know, then they came back with Kai Jones, a big guy. So I love Book Knight in that with him and LaMelo Ball. I just think that is a great fit for them. And, you know, that's a guy for me that once they left the draft, you know, when you look at the Eastern standings, like I think he legit gives them credibility right into the playoff race right off the bat. Because I think Book Knight Book Knight is funny with UConn. He kind of at sometimes like I felt at times he'd almost be better off in the NBA because like it was just too much was needed of him. When he can play sort of that off-ball role and compete and get free shots from LaMelo, I just think that's a perfect fit. So I think I think they did a great job. And I think, like I said, I think they've catapulted right into the Eastern playoff race to the point where I'd be surprised right off the bat if they could even go top 5, top 6 in my mind. I think they did a great job. Yeah. Slam dunk for them, in my opinion.
Number one, Houston number 2. My fault, partner. What you got going on?
Oh, it's just what are guys' thoughts on Indiana getting they got Chris Duarte, they got
and Isaiah Jackson.
Yeah.
You know what? So okay, this is where I have a hard time judging their draft. So Duarte, to me, I like Duarte. He can score. He plays defense. I don't buy too much into that. I think when they overrate the oldest guy in the draft. But I think in the Pacers case, it somewhat is a factor because the Pacers are kind of in that mid-range. So I do like the two pieces. And I mean, Jackson, Jackson can definitely do some things down low, but I don't get the feeling they're substantially better with him. Point being, I almost think Indiana could have moved, like I brought up with the Knicks earlier. I think they could have moved in the draft, and so Duarte helps them immediately. But does he move the needle? I don't see that. I think he's a nice player. He's an eventual starter, but again, like when you judge it in totality, yes, the decent picks. I don't see them as being much different with him. Put it that way. I thought Duarte would be better served being taken or moved to a contender who could use a piece like him.
I just figured after having you sung up his defensive prowess, he would have fit well into Rick Carlisle's system.
Yeah, no doubt. But you get what I'm saying. I think some guys are like, by the time Indiana is ready to compete, and this is where I use the age thing. I don't think he's ancient, and I think that's overrated at times. But by the time Duarte's, the Pacers are, in my mind, they're at least 2-3 years away from a contending title window. Duarte's now, he's now 25, 26. I don't, or even older than that. Sorry. I don't see there's a clear direction. Yes, he helps in of itself. I kind of was looking for them to make more of a franchise move, and I didn't really see that. A good pick in of itself, though, yes.
Talking some blue chip prospects, you've been big on Jalen Suggs for a long time. And I don't think many people, including ourselves, thought Toronto was going to pass on him, but sure enough, they did. He falls right into the lap of Orlando, looking to rebuild with a full clean slate. New head coach who's been around the block a little bit. He kind of had Jamal Mosley kind of has a little bit of Buck Showalter in him. He coaches teams before they go on and win a title or go on a deep playoff run. But, now he's got a fresh team. He gets this stud point guard. And then they take this project. Franz Wagner was getting a lot of buzz going into the draft, but everyone said he was a project. So did they set themselves up to have a nice rebuilding thing, or do they have, or it's just kind of like too much of a good thing with a crowded backcourt? Fultz has got to come back. They've got the Cole Anthony from last year. They got too many point guards running around, and now they throw in this kid that they kind of have to play because of his skill level and high draft stock.
I actually, when we talked about the draft, I actually love what Orlando did. I think a lot of times in drafts, number one, the fact that Suggs fell that far, I didn't expect that. I don't think a lot of people did. Orlando, I don't care what your team is. You're not a great team. Suggs has a chance to be a franchise talent. So I think they absolutely did the right thing in grabbing him. And if their draft just alone was that, I think they get an A for that, because they obviously, if he fell into their laps, they didn't overthink things. Wagner to me is a kid that like I think he doesn't have to be, for me, and the reactions going into the draft about him were mixed. For me, he doesn't have to be a great scorer. He didn't shoot the three great. He's kind of one of those guys that can, like, he definitely to me can be a 3 and D. He does a lot of things well, maybe not great at any. So like just looking at that right there, when you have a guy like Suggs who's now going to be running that team, Wagner can play off the ball consistently. He'll get open shots from. So I'm glad you touched on that, because I forgot about Suggs, who I love. I think they did a great job. You had to pick him there, and they'll figure out the rest with the guards. Like even Cole Anthony, who had a decent year, you could make a case he could play the 2 guard anyway. Often teams in the NBA nowadays are playing, multiple points at the same time. So they hit it out of the park, but they lucked out, in my opinion, because Suggs fell there, but they did the right thing. And Wagner's a piece. He'll be he'll be an excellent role player, however they utilized him. He's athletic. I believe he was one of the youngest guys in the draft, if not the youngest. So he has time to develop with Suggs. I think they did a nice job.
Since we just touched on some, the big winners of the drafts a little while ago, let's talk about the teams that stunk it up and took some big L's. If you had to name a team, who would you name?
So I think there's a couple that come to mind. I don't want to say like there was so much movement in the draft and post-draft that it's hard to isolate, but just the draft itself, I definitely did not like what Atlanta did. So even though they were, they drafted at 20, I thought Jalen Johnson, I can't get behind the fact that this guy, when you followed his history, he basically transferred 3 different times in high school. He basically left Duke in the middle of the season, which no one actually really thinks that it was COVID related. He just decided we're not playing well. I want to get ready for the draft. I don't, and even when he did play, I didn't see, like, yes, there's physical talent, but I don't know how, for a team like Atlanta, who's on the cusp of that's exactly the type of kid you want to bring in. That doesn't sound to me like someone who's going to thrive off the bench and want to learn and improve, not play right away. And then what they came back with, and I know Shad, the last time, Sharif Cooper, who they drafted, the point guard out of Auburn. Here's my issue. I don't hate Cooper, but apparently it was well documented back to the Knicks that McBride of West Virginia had severely outplayed him in the combine, in the one-on-ones. So I guess when they were head-to-head, the choice was made. Cooper apparently didn't look good. Now, I don't think that's an indictment of his whole career, but I didn't get a feeling that Atlanta addressed what they really would need right off the bat. Like, that's a team ready to compete, and I think they kind of have 2 projects. So I wasn't a big fan of those. I'll go over to Memphis as well. Now, Memphis made a lot of moves outside of the draft, but so Zaire Williams, high ceiling, high floor. I'm not seeing it right away. I think that's a project at 10. Granted, Stanford was not great this past season, but he was very erratic. I grant you he does have talent, but I think with Memphis, same thing. Memphis is getting to that point. They had a great run late with John Morant. I could see him developing later on, but I personally think Zaire is more of a project right now. I don't think his game is complete. There is a philosophy that he's the type of guy that on NBA floor will flourish when he's not the number 1 like he was at Stanford. But I didn't love the pick at him at 10. I almost feel like with all the movement that took place, that's a guy they could have moved down, added another pick, and probably got him in the late teens of the draft. So I would say Memphis and Atlanta were my kind of big question marks. I didn't exactly love what they did.
Well, Atlanta is already a team rich with talent. So I feel like they probably just took a chance on that kid just because, we already have 3 people in front of him that could take his minutes. If he does develop into something, remotely serviceable, then yay us, you know what I'm saying? But they already have a lot of talent.
I'm with you on the upside.
Yeah.
I guess I do have an issue with, and a lot of the NBA people brought it up too, that the fact that this kid literally he's walked out on basically 4 teams. I'm not judging his character. I don't know enough of his personal life, but I just I don't know. I feel like you can go another direction because they're also a young team. So I feel like chemistry is something. So if he does prove to be a malcontent or someone who doesn't bring effort, this doesn't reek to me someone who's going to come in and fit in seamlessly, right? I just for that reason I was like, I didn't love the pick. I do get the upside, I do, but yeah, I'm giving them a below average grade.
Well, they could do better.
Yes.
Speaking of trades, our Knicks and the Clippers moved around a lot. But another team that last episode we all thought that they were really going to blow it up, trade the picture on, bring in some ready-made superstar talent to go make a run at more championships. The Warriors, we couldn't have been more wrong. They didn't do any of that, and they just stood there and took some rookies. Was that the good move, or based on what we thought they were going to do going in? Did they take an L?
So I won't say I was surprised as well. I very much thought they would move those picks because, again, they're in a window and they know it. The window is very finite with Curry, with Thompson, Draymond. I'm not sure so I won't say I like the picks they made, again, in of themselves. I think Kuminga has probably as high an upside ceiling as pretty much almost anyone in the draft. I mean, if you watched any even of the summer league, his athleticism was clear and present. Moody definitely can help right away. He can score. He's a 3-and-D guy. I'm just on the fence with that because I don't know. I don't think that gets them over the top in the next 2-3 years. So I guess my question is, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to stay decent now and rebuild for 3 years from now? Because I just don't think, as presently constituted, those guys will move the needle in the time frame that Curry and Thompson are still on theirs. So it's gonna sound odd. I'm gonna grade this like an incomplete for me because I'm still not certain. I'm still not certain that this is the team they hit the floor with, and I'm not to start the season. And I almost feel again that for them to extend Curry and Thompson's championship window, they still have moves to make, whether that's, making a deal for Bradley Beal at the deadline. So I'm going to say I don't hate the picks, but I'm going incomplete because I don't really have a clear picture of what direction they're going right now. What do you guys feel about that? Because I'm surprised that I don't think they know where they're going.
Yeah. I still feel like our initial prediction is correct. They're just going to do it later on. I think they still need to see where Klay is at, physically. Is he 90% of himself? Is he 60% of himself? And now they can if they need to move on from Klay, they can pair him with those two young guys and probably still get somebody like a Bradley Beal, or even James Wiseman. They can move him too as well. They got talent now that they can move.
I agree with that too. That's why they incomplete. I totally can see. Just to bring Philly into this, I'm nowhere near convinced right now that Philly is Embiid and Simmons throughout that year. So that could make sense to me. Does Ben Simmons get moved as a piece in a Wiseman deal? One of these draft picks. That's why I'm saying. So the picks themselves, I thought were solid picks, but I'm with you. I don't think we have a clear picture of what. They're not done yet, is put it that way.
Yeah, they're definitely not done.
I'm going to push you guys a little bit on that because conventional wisdom would dictate if Clay's hurt and they need to say, all right, we got to cut anchor and get away from this contract. You think they would want to keep these young kids to rebuild a little bit, or at least conventional wisdom would dictate, okay, if we're going to rebuild, then we got to keep our young talent and just take Steph with whatever Steph is and try to rebuild something up for our years post Steph. But is that conventional wisdom not apply here? And these young kids, whether it's Wiseman, whether it's Kuminga, whether it's Moody, they're more to sweeten the pot to convince someone to take all that Klay money?
No, I think that's a valid point. And quite frankly, they could get to a point where they say, and that's what I mean by I think they're towing the line, and it's not necessarily the worst strategy either. You're right. They could decide Klay doesn't come back. He's not the same player. Draymond slips. I don't think anywhere near it, but Curry will show some slippage at some point. You're right. That is a viable alternative that they decide, you know what, we're actually now going to build around these young kids, and maybe they make the move near the trade deadline to move. I don't see it happening, but just, hypothetical, to move Klay Thompson, a Curry, etc. It's not crazy. But again, I'm not sure. I think this story is still to be played out, and I think Klay is a big part of that. How does he look? I don't even think necessarily that looking to move him. Just do they think they're strong enough? Those guys are still good enough that they can compete for another title. And if not, you're right. Then they pivot and build around the young guys. So that is a very viable alternative.
I think they keep Steph at all costs, and they're gonna try to the LeBron James syndrome. Wherever team he goes to, they blow it up and try to build the championship team around him. I think they're gonna do that for Steph. They would love it to be Klay, but if it can't be, they got the assets to make sure that he could still compete.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, James. I saw some recently too. The franchise value. before Steph got there. I don't have the numbers in front of me. But seriously, it is
Garbage.
outlandishly higher since Steph got there. I mean, think about it. They have a new arena. They moved to Steph is the face of that franchise. And I think there's some guys that you can't, you let them play out there. I agree with you. When I mentioned Curry, I just meant the direction. I don't think they'd move him. I could see them moving Clay. I could see them moving Draymond, but you're right. I think Steph, he's such a good shooter that even when his playmaking skills and his athleticism decline, he can still probably score 20 a game, off someone else feeding him just off jump shots. So I agree with that.
That's like one of those PR hits that a team is going to struggle to withstand. If the Warriors got rid of Steph Curry, that's like if the Yankees got rid of Derek Jeter. That's like, when Patriots let Tom Brady walk. That's a hard PR hit to swallow.
It totally is. And I think Curry even more so because, I mean, again, they've had some success in the past, but no one equated the Warriors with anything, even though Wilt had until Curry, really. I mean, yes, they had good teams with Hardaway and Mullen but Curry's the face of that franchise. I mean, they have to play him out until he's done. I agree with that.
Yeah, and he broke the NBA.
Yeah, but I think it's like we're getting back to that. I don't think when I said incomplete, I'm not even like judging that in a poor way. I just think they have a lot to see themselves, and I don't think they know or we don't or they know how this is going to look, right? So, yeah, but you're right. They put themselves in a good position that they have assets either way now, and they took in Kuminga. He's probably as high a ceiling as anyone, so that could turn out to be a superstar in the future. So, yeah, a good job to be determined what happens.
The Kings. I know you like Davion Mitchell, but they got a lot of point guards out there, similar to Orlando's little stockpile of a crowded backcourt. The Kings have one point guard too many now.
I don't think so. I'm a firm believer in Davion Mitchell. I mean, if you saw him at Baylor, he was such a huge factor on that team. And there's some guys that you look at and their role will diminish in the pros. Mitchell is not that because Mitchell can totally affect the game without scoring. I mean, he's literally I'd have to say he was the best perimeter defender in college last year. In the brief summer league they've played, he's played excellent on both sides of the ball. So Sacramento, for me, he's exactly the type of guy that I don't care what position he plays. They've had one-dimensional players for years. They've had, even when they've had scoring, shooting, in the current teams, they have kids who can light it up, play no defense. So for a team that has been in flux like Sacramento, I think he's your glue guy, whether he's the point guard where he can play multiple positions. I think he's exactly what they need. Him and Halliburton, I like to use the term, they're basketball players. Forget the talent, are you a point guard or small? They're two really good basketball players. And I think when you add a high intelligence player like that who can play D, that changes everything for the team. So I love Sacramento getting Mitchell. I think he's a difference maker from day one. His point total may not reflect it, but for my money's worth, he's top 3 rookie of the year candidate this year because I just think he will have that much of a difference on that team.
Heck, saying Sacramento's been in flux is actually kind of a nice way of describing their situation.
AKA, they haven't known what the heck they're doing. But seriously, you know what? I really mean that. Their directions in drafts, in people they've signed, moving people. Like, it's been very clear for a long time. Like, they haven't had a direction. I think a guy like Mitchell just gives them that build around guy. I really think he can be that player without having to score 28 a game. That's what I mean. He's the exact opposite of let me put it this way. He's the guy they've been missing for a long time. I think he's going to be a substantial player for now and in the future of Sacramento. I think it's a great move grabbing him.
Well, we're on the topic of college stars. Several of them fell into the second round. Mitchell's Baylor buddy Jared Butler made his way to Utah via a trade. We already touched quite a bit on Sharif Cooper, who's now Trae Young's backup in Atlanta. Had a little bit of an effective summer league. Luke Garza was a super scorer in college. He's going to the Pistons with number 1 pick Cade Cunningham. Are these gems that these teams found? Did they kind of fall into perfect situations on good teams that need a little bit extra, but bad teams that need talent to grow on, or in the middle teams that just kind of need some extra talent?
Starting on Butler, Butler, he went to Utah. I think that's a great fit for Butler because Butler does not have to come in, and he's not going to be a substantial player year 1, probably even year 2. Butler's another kid in the modern NBA. He's a basketball player. Let me use that term again. He's a very good basketball player. He gets the game. Guy plays excellent perimeter D, can shoot the 3, and he's the type of kid. The more you watch him play, where he's been looked at some ways, he's undersized, he's this, he's that. The more you watch him play, he's just he's a difference maker. So I think on a team like Utah, who's on the upswing, well coached, he doesn't have to be a superstar. He can learn. I think that's a great move. Garza for Detroit, I'm very much on the fence with him. He's a kid I want to root for because there's a story back in Iowa before in high school. His dad would basically make fun of how slow he was. That basically he couldn't get up and down the court. It was kind of a challenge to him. And if you looked at Garza, even now he's not fleet of foot, but he plays hard. He's a very good shooter from 3. He put up a line the other night, 20-20 in the summer league. It's worth a shot in the second round. I don't think this is a star in the making, but again, in the modern NBA, you got a guy who can, shoot 40% from 3, come in and grab, 10 rebounds and even a couple putbacks. I mean, when you have Cade Cunningham running the game, the defense is going to be focused on him. They have some good young guards. Yeah, I think he can play a role. So Garza was someone, to be honest, I really questioned, but I kind of look at the mix and I think, yes, like that. I think a lot of these kids, it's where do you fit? What role are you in? I think he does have a chance to thrive in that system.
Further thoughts on Sharif Cooper? Or are you kind of done with him and frying in the pan?
I'm not done. Okay, so it's funny. I said I when I got on Atlanta earlier for Jalen Johnson, it's obvious that those warning signs, I don't like them. Cooper, like I said, got outplayed badly in some of the combine stuff, but I will say this, he's also very young. He's a bullet. I will say in the second round, backing up Trae Young, I think that on the same token, I think the potential is there for him to make a difference in the sense that, like, even if he's getting torched defensively, which has been an issue for him, if he's coming in Atlanta as the 7th, 8th guy, they don't really need him to play defense, right? So long term, I think the size and the defensive issues may be a concern, but for Atlanta in the second round to add some instant offense with, if Trae's off the court injured, I actually think, again, the fit kind of works for that team. Again, I think it's a limited role, but I think because he's able to stay in that limited role for now, I think it could work.
Yeah, he hates him.
What's that?
I said, yeah, he hates him.
No, it's funny. I actually love his athleticism. I think I really do. I think he's a bullet. He's quick as heck. But I think it's also, I don't want to say a project, but the defensive side of the game is it's not there right now. So, and in the NBA, that is a big deal. So, again, but guys make careers off being scorers, off being, backup point guards. So, yeah, right? It can happen.
You could say the defensive side of the ball isn't there for 80% of the NBA.
True, but true. But some guys at least try. No, when I got in Atlanta, I'm just back to again. It was more the Jalen Johnson thing. Like I feel bad. I shouldn't be dumping on Sharif. Sure, he's a nice kid.
So yeah, this is the moment I feel like we all three, well, have been waiting for, to talk about the home team, the New York Knicks, and their draft haul this year. Miles McBride, Jericho Sims, Quentin Grimes, and Rokas. I don't want to mess up his last name.
Just go with Roku, like the TV. Roku. We'll call him Roku.
Yeah, Roku Joku.
Instant entertainment.
There you go. Yeah, we got a slogan for him.
Yeah, Roku Joku, man. He's always working, you know what I'm saying? How do you feel about this haul? I'm kind of excited. Went to, I think we teetered more on like the defensive side of the ball, two-way players. How do you feel?
I think in general, so let me start off. I think the Knicks stayed the course, which I was thrilled with. When their spot came, they deducted, and I agree, there wasn't a star player there wasn't a star where they were going to draft. Whether they tried to move up or not, which we had heard they did not work out. They pivoted and moved down. Then they moved down again. So the point is, if they had done nothing, they didn't make a foolish move. They saved draft capital. They didn't trade any of their picks for, I don't even want to say an over-the-hill veteran, but they didn't make moves to compromise the future. They added capital, which I thought was a great move right in and of itself. And then as far as the players they drafted, we talked about Grimes months ago. Like, guy fits for them. The Knicks have lacked perimeter shooting. It was blaringly obvious in the playoff series. What does Grimes do? He's excellent from three. He's very good defensively. When he got to that role in Houston in college, when he went to Kansas, he was supposed to be the man. He was a McDonald's All-American. He was the best player for Houston, but he still was somewhat of a, like I said, I don't want to say a role player, but they emphasize his strengths. I think it's a great move. It's exactly what the Knicks need. And Thibodeau, defense is his calling card. So this kid can get after it. He gets in your face. I think it's an excellent move. McBride, I think, is that's a potential home run. And I actually believe that. Because another thing, the Knicks needed a point guard badly. So even if McBride is not, the standout offensive, everyone knows he makes guys miserable on the defensive end. And again, I know it's hard to judge everything off Summer League, but he looked awesome in the Summer League. He hit threes. He was causing turnovers. I don't know if you guys caught the Pistons game. I believe it was Friday night, which the Knicks lost. They literally came back. They were down 20 with about, I'm not kidding, maybe less than 2 minutes left, and got it down to a possession within that last minute. And McBride was he was causing havoc. The point is, no, the NBA is not going to be the Summer League, obviously, but that translates. If you make possessions miserable for people, if you're getting in passing lanes, if you're disrupting the offense, even if that's all you're doing for now, I think he's going to be a difference. And again, there's not many times these days with the second round non-guaranteed contracts. They signed him to a 3-year contract, no two-way deal. So I think they've seen already, this kid really has the potential to, if not a starting point guard somewhere in the future, like a legit piece on a contending roster. So I think they hit it out of the park. And I'm sorry, they picked up Sims with the third one, correct? Yeah, and Sims, again, rim protection. Another guy who, offensive game, very, very unpolished. But again, rim runner, excellent defensively, block shots. With their question mark about what they do with Mitchell Robinson, do they sign him further? Do they keep him around? I think either way, you have a role player. And if you're drafting midway through the second round and you have a guy who does one thing very well, which for him, his calling card is defensive rebounding, I think they did a great job without sacrificing any of their future, keeping on track. And I think they did a great job for that reason.
McBride gives me Drew Holiday vibes, like a baby Drew Holiday.
I like that, actually.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I think he's like my favorite so far right now. That may change. But I like McBride a lot.
Yeah, and if you, James, the same thing. If you guys saw him at West Virginia, Like I love my college. I watched him a ton there. Like he really he's a difference maker. He is, and again, just defensively. So if in the NBA, how many? And I think this is often a problem. Often a college team's main scorer goes to the NBA. How many guys in the NBA are the scorer on their team? The scorers, right? Yeah. So you have to play different roles. McBride, I'm a firm believer, can make a total difference, even if he wasn't, if he doesn't score 10 points a game. And I think he has the potential to. I'm with you. I like you see his shooting stroke. He had a few games. I think he was like 6 for 8 from 3. I don't care what level you're playing at. If you can shoot the 3 at that level, he has the stroke is the point, right? So I agree. I think they did an excellent job. I feel weird saying this, but I feel really good about the Knicks going forward.
Yeah. And I think, them having McBride kind of like, I mean, they had Frank Ntilikina, who was a really good defender, like on-ball defender, but he would not shoot the ball. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And with McBride, you don't have that. It doesn't seem like we're going to have that issue.
You're right. And I might be like, I've definitely soured on Frank, and I thought of that comparison as well. But I don't mean to cut on Frank, but it's clear as day to me already that McBride has a better shooting stroke than Frank did, period. I think he did. And I don't know. For me, Frank was a young kid who came over from France. I don't necessarily know his career is done, but McBride playing at a high college level, I mean, I feel like we've seen more of what he does. I think, and I don't mean to dump on Frank. It's a big difference coming over from another country, another league. I just think McBride is a better fit. I do. And I think that stroke, unfortunately for Frank, not to cut on him either, Frank's talents, they didn't mesh. Like he went to a team in the Knicks that probably had the worst perimeter shooting in the league. Well, they can't afford another non-perimeter shooter in Frank, right?
No,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah. So I not to cut on Frank, but I do. I think McBride will make a difference from day one. Again, I'm not saying he's rookie of the year by any means, but he will play valuable minutes as a reserve backup point guard, and he'll do some things.
So, partner, you've been a little quiet over there. You have anything to say about our beloved Knicks? How do you feel about our draft?
I like I like the fact that we took. I mean, we always how many times have we said in the last year or 3 years or 5 years, we don't have a point guard. We need point guards, and we take 2 of them, and they're both defenders, and one of them's an excellent shooter, and the one of them's a pretty decent shooter. So I kind of like what we did there, and I don't know. We're joking around Roku Joku. He may be nothing, but I don't know. I kind of have always wanted the Knicks to have some international phenom on their team. So maybe this is the year we finally got an international phenom.
I pray it is, man. Praise the second coming of Dwight Howard.
Is he a big man? I know nothing about him. Is he a big man?
I think he's a big man, right? Is Roku Joku a big man? Hold on.
Well, my Roku TV is 62 inches, so hopefully he's big.
Hey.
All right, Gregors, the floor is yours. Why don't you pick out a few picks that fell into perfect situations, some international stashes that may have been found throughout the first and second round, or just any kind of general thought about the draft?
So I think what was kind of a jaw dropper early on, Josh Giddey at number 6 to Oklahoma City. So, it's hard for off the bat, unless the guys who are really, especially when the COVID year, to see a lot of these guys. But, I remember seeing when they took him 6th, I'm like, wow, like what did they, and actually like watch some draft type tape on this kid. And I kind of get the comparison. They compared him a little bit to like Luka Doncic. Now, obviously that's an extreme comparison, but if you're anywhere near that and you're playing any other type of the game. So, this is a young kid. Right before draft time, he had back-to-back triple doubles, averages over 11 points, 7 assists, 7 rebounds a game, shot over 40% from the field. And something they said that I remember hearing, that they basically said he has elite playmaking skills and a pick and roll maestro. I'll quote. If you have anything close to that, that's obviously a hell of a ball player. And again, I mean, to be able to a pick and roll maestro in today's NBA, I mean, what percentage of possessions are pick and roll? If this kid's phenomenal in that, can see the floor. And, I saw one of the potential weaknesses. They said streaky shooter. But again, this is a kid. So if that turns into good or great shooter and you're already a pick and roll maestro, obviously OKC could have hit a slam dunk with that one. So I guess if you're pairing him with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that could be a serious 1-2 punch. So, I guess there's questions to, the floor ceiling on him, but I've got to have a good feeling if those are his positive qualities that they could have a future superstar on their hand and a good fit with Shai. The other kid, and getting back to Houston from Earl that we said we loved in the draft, this Alperen Sengun, who I believe I said correctly, the 16th pick from Houston. So this falls into the other elite comparison guy. 6'10", big-bodied, somewhat plodding, they say. Great hands, a little slow right now. Excellent floor spacer, sees cutters, sees the three. This does sound a lot like Nikola Jokic.
It does.
And it really does. And, same thing. I mean, how much we see, say what you want about, playing in Turkey, still an established professional basketball league. He won MVP of the league. And the other thing that is interesting that you hear is they think he's just scratched the surface. He's got great hands, great feel for the game. So, slow of foot. I mean, did any of us, is Jokic ever been anything but slow of foot? Of course not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you have a player in that mold of a basketball player, and just think of it this way, if you just Jalen Green, who that's who we focused on earlier as the number 2 pick, if you have an elite scorer, Jalen Green, and then you have this monster inside who they say is just great in the paint, just tactical, great hands. I mean, that can be a inside-outside combo that could seriously wreak some havoc, even early on. So where Sengun seems like there may be a little more development going forward than Giddey, if the same was the case with Jokic, right? I mean, Jokic was a second rounder who became an MVP. So just the fact that you have some elite skills, and even if that's just seeing the floor, spacing, creating, hitting the open three guy from the paint, I think that could be a great move for Houston, and I think their rebuild could happen quickly.
And we spent a lot of time throughout the season ripping Houston apart for the disaster that was kind of left after Harden. They might not be looking too shabby.
Well, let's not go that crazy here. This is going to take a while. No, I think they rebounded quickly. Yes, I think they did probably as good a job as they could have done as per the draft. But I also think they could have gotten more for the players they got rid of as well earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, you can look at it from that perspective. Well, they rebounded quickly, but I don't know. I mean, if I don't feel like going from Harden and Oladipo, they whiffed badly on Oladipo regardless, right? I mean,
they did.
Yeah. I mean, I never understood. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they had, I'm forgetting in the 3-way deal, not only Oladipo, who did they have from the Nets? Refresh my memory.
Karis LeVert.
Yeah.
Like, if you could have kept Karis LeVert, not done that for Oladipo, add these people, that's where. So I'm not ready. And let's not fool ourselves either. On the downside, the Houston draft or where they are feels a little on a bad note, like the Timberwolves for years. You have Karl-Anthony Towns and you had this prospect with him and that, this is still a far from finished product, but I think they put some good building blocks in place, but by no means is this team anywhere ready, even if these kids do play well, to be a playoff team anytime in the next.
Absolutely. I agree with you that 100%.
Yeah. So even Green scoring, if Green scores 25 a game this year, he's still at this point in his game, he's still a one-dimensional, he's a scorer right now. Can he be a lot more than that? Absolutely.
Right.
But as for the draft, I think that Sengun and Green could be a lethal combo.
Yeah.
We got to see some of them in the summer league too. So.
Yeah. You still got Kevin Porter over there, Kevin Porter Jr. which shows flashes every now and again.
But same thing you just said. I agree. Porter's nasty talent, but this also has the disaster potential written all over it, right? I mean, you have young, immature, who's in charge,
right?
This where this Sengun kid, if I tie back again, he could actually help in the sense that, he seems like from the scouting report like a very intelligent player. So he will do things outside of scoring, if he's not putting up points. But how does that all mesh together? None of us know that right now.
Yeah, it's something remain to be seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the draft, they took some home run swings. They didn't lay down any bunts. I think it was a good move.
Nice.
I know you want to rip on the Wizards, but can you help me figure out what's going on in New Orleans? I mean, they are desperate to keep Zion happy so he stays there. Who's Trey Murphy? Is this someone that can actually convince Zion to stay?
You know what? I tell you what, Trey Murphy is one of those kids. He kind of blew up late. After he transferred in college, he actually does. I mean, keeping Zion there, Trey Murphy, is he going to be the reason? No. But, I mean, do I also think that he can kind of be an immediate contributor for them? I do, actually. I think he can put some points on the board. I think he has enough of a defensive profile that, they lack. They gave up a ton of points. I think he will give them some valuable minutes. And even Herbert Jones, I touched on one of the Knicks, who went 35. He came from Alabama. Jones was a lockdown guy at Alabama who, had big-time games for them without even putting many points up. So I think I think for the draft, those kids will help. But I mean, again, they're still rookies. They're not going to come in and have the immediate impact that sends, New Orleans Zion to sign that contract because of them. But I do think they actually did all right in the draft though with those two. Yeah, Jones, as a matter of fact, got a guaranteed contract in a second rounder, which we touched on earlier at McBride. Not a lot of guys do get that. So so they feel confident enough about him. Same thing we talked about, and they know he can do one thing well, and that translate. He's going to hustle. He's going to play D. He's going to give them something they haven't had. But no, Murphy has some good upside. I think that was a decent move on that. He played well in the summer league as well.
So is his nickname going to be Stay Murphy?
Well, I'm betting they hope it's Trey Murphy instead of 2 Point Murphy. So I don't know. No, he's a pretty nice player though. I liked what I saw at him in college. He has potential to be a player.
I hope it works out for them on the Pelicans. But then again, I don't, because I want Zion to come to the Knicks to play with RJ, because they said they want to play with each other again at some point in time. So hopefully it could be on the Knicks.
I guess at this point, I think for the first time, that is a actual realistic possibility. And quickly on the Knicks, being that we're all fans of, I actually heard Kemba Walker speak today, and they asked him the exact question just about, is it true that the Knicks are, for years have not been a destination, that the top players don't want to go there? And he said, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but was interesting. He didn't, categorically say, oh yeah, we weren't coming. But he did allude to the fact, he even talked about that, with Thibodeau, they look like things are in place. So now I think another productive year, which it looks like they probably will have, they probably will be in play for people like Zion now, which, I think there is a chance of that. I mean, obviously New Orleans is going to move heaven and high water to keep him.
Yeah.
It's hard.
They'll break the bank.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's hard from a franchise standpoint, right? How do you sell the franchise to the fan base if you just got rid of Anthony Davis, then Zion, like that?
Right.
That can be crippling for decades, just from a morale and a city perspective, right?
They'll send him to Seattle.
Yeah. We'll welcome him with open arms if he does come now. I'll tell you that much.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So Chase, you touched on the Wizards, correct?
Oh yeah. You want your moment of de-glory?
They didn't do the best in the draft?
I can't for the life of me, and again, I know this talked about prior. I can't for the life of me figure that's all they did in lieu of getting rid of Westbrook. And I think it ties into the draft. So here's why I say that. So Washington takes Kispert 15th out of Gonzaga, who has his limitations, but is considered probably the best straight up shooter in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Why you would then not have Westbrook to deliver the ball to Kispert to shoot that? I don't have a direction at all of what they did really. They brought in Caldwell Pope and that trade. And I know there's a lot of salary movement, and that's a lot of this. But none of those guys, Harrell, Kuzma's a nice player and has some upside, but they had to take him off the floor this past offseason for the Lakers. Potential buy low, yes, but you don't buy low when you're trading Russell Westbrook. And then again, like you're bringing in Kispert, who's a complementary piece to a team, a team with playoff aspirations. So I don't really see, again, do I think Kispert will be a good shooter in the league? Yes, I do. But when you're the Wizards, I think you need a lot more than that right now, not a complementary piece. So I think they're a little rudderless ship right now. I don't see what the direction is over there.
How do you feel about them adding Spencer Dinwiddie? Because they didn't have a starting point guard unless they were going to let Bradley Beal play the starting point guard.
I actually, you know what? I will say that. I'm glad you touched on that. I think that was a good gamble, because I think he does have a lot of upside still. So if you want to say they rebounded in the offseason somewhat, and let me also cater that by saying, did they make some of those moves, even money-wise, hopefully to having Dinwiddie part of the plan? Possibly. Regardless whether or not, that was a nice move. But again, Dinwiddie's, he's a substantial injury concern. But I do agree, though, that it's a good upside swing on him, yes. Dinwiddie's a very good player when healthy. So I think that was a good move. But even that, are you or any of us ready to pin a franchise on Spencer Dinwiddie? No.
No. For sure not.
Love the player, don't get me wrong. But even the draft capital they got from the Lakers, it's like, well, I didn't see the long-term gain out of the Westbrook move. So
I have an idea, guys. This is something I just thought off the top of my head. All right. So after this year's draft, right? Who is the team that you think is like the most in trouble? Like they're like 5 years out before getting right in the ship. You know what I mean? For me, matter of fact, I'll leave my opinion till afterwards. Greg, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm sorry. I'm gonna put you on the spot and see.
No, that's okay. I just want to clarify that. So the worst 5 years from now, or the worst like right now after the draft, or both?
Yeah, right. Like the furthest away from.
Okay. That the furthest away from contending right now. Well, I know this is going to be a weird answer, but the furthest away from contending to me, the two teams we just spoke about, and Houston's still there for me. Like, again, I love the draft, but they really blew it up, right? They
blew it up and burned it down.
Yeah. And oftentimes, and I'll use the Timberwolves as they've had a foundation piece.
Yeah.
And even with him, when you blow it up that substantially, like how long does that take? And the West still is stronger in the East, in my opinion. So, I even with those kids, if they turn out to be, they're still I can't see a playoff berth for at least 4 years, probably minimum. I could be wrong, obviously, but I think they're a long, long way away, even with Jalen Green.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess on the same thing, I'm going to go, I'll put Washington there. Not as they won't be as bad this year, standing wise, but Bradley Beal, what's going to happen there? That's going to be if I'm Bradley Beal right now, if you are, do you want to re-sign there? Do you want to? I don't see
Get me out of here, please.
I agree. So that's why it may not be reflected. Could they, compete for one of the lower playoff spots this year? Sure. But
yeah, maybe.
I like that long term. I agree. Like I think they're in trouble. Like I don't see where the building blocks are. I don't see a plan in place too. I mean, unless they plan on lottery picks again the next few years. But I'd have to put long term them in Houston right at the top of that list. I guess they bottom. There's nothing top about being the worst.
Right.
That
Yeah.
top of the bottom.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, off the top of my head, because I think, sorry, just to tie back in, like I do think even Orlando, who got rid of people, Suggs is a franchise corner that he can be a cornerstone, right? So he's a point guard, he's a playmaker, he'll be the leader. I feel good about having that in place, as opposed to where Jalen Green can be possibly the best player in the draft long term. He's a scorer, So if they don't have the pieces around him, that could be a disaster. We've seen that in the NBA before.
Absolutely.
What about you guys? Where are you guys on that?
I'm gonna go 2 as well. One is probably low hanging fruit. I think the Timberwolves were absolutely ravaged by the virus last year.
Yeah. That's my number 1 too as well.
And I'm not seeing their name at all in the draft. Like I don't know if they just sent off all their picks or anything, but I don't see anything remotely attractive about going there. I mean, maybe that's why A-Rod wants to buy him, just because it's probably a invaluable franchise that's cheap. But I just why would Cat stay there at all? I can't think of any reason why Cat would want to stay with that team. And then the other one to me is a team that won a title not too long ago, is the Raptors. I mean, I don't know too much about Scotty Barnes. I'm not trying to dig on him, but we love Jalen Suggs. They passed him up. They shipped off Lowry. Sycam's kind of plateaued. Nick Nurse's gold dust is kind of fading. Like, I don't know where the Raptors are right now. So, I mean, I'll take the low hanging fruit, the Timberwolves, and I have absolutely no idea where the Raptors are going.
Those are good picks, partner. I really feel as well like Minnesota they're really in trouble because they have no cap space. They have good players on the team, but not enough to survive in the Western Conference. And I think it's only a matter of time before A, one of their stars leave, or B, they just like, all right, this isn't working. We're gonna have to blow this up. And we need to send a prayer out for Anthony Edwards, because I feel like he's, if he was in a better situation, like we would really see him like flourish. Because I think that kid is a stud. But I don't know. I think Minnesota is like, for me, they're like the top team that's in trouble.
James, just to touch on your point, this is why just what you talked about is why I kept them out of the bottom 2. Edwards, to me, like I saw him play almost every one of his games at Georgia. I watched his games. You could see like highly erratic. He had games where he just dominated for 20 minutes. Another 20, it's like, where is he? Is he on the floor? I think, like, I could be wrong on this. I feel like the end of last year, he really did like take a step forward.
No, he did.
He had some monster games, and you know what? If he stays anywhere near that level of play, him and Towns and even D'Angelo Russell, like I know that I've thought this for many years, and we probably all have. I actually think you could see some improvement out of them this time around. Like,
I hope so. I like all those guys.
I actually kind of do. So again, that's why Edwards to me did show enough. He showed the ceiling could be extremely high. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So if you have him in Towns or a guy like Russell, and they have some pieces around. I granted, we've thought this a lot of times about them, but that's why I kept them out. I think Edwards could turn out to be a pretty darn good player.
Yeah, I agree.
Am I off base with my Raptors?
No, I agree. I agree. I see for you, bro. I didn't even think about the Raptors. Like they were like not even they were afterthought for me. Now that Kyle Lowry isn't there, and it's just Spicy P and whoever else is on the Raptors. Um, I don't know. It's gonna be tough for them. And the East got better in this offseason. You got teams emerging like the Bulls. Um, the Hornets got better. Atlanta's gonna be a mainstay. It seems to look like. You know what I mean? Of course, we gonna be back. The Knicks. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I don't know where the Raptors fit in the top echelon of the Eastern Conference. They might not make the playoffs for a couple of years, and that might be what they want. Who knows?
So I don't mind I'm not trying to be the contrarian to you guys, but they made one move that I think was the most important move, arguably of the entire offseason in the NBA. They re-signed Ujiri, their GM. And the reason I say that is, you know what? When they've already rebuilt on the fly into a title team when they grabbed.
They did do that.
You know,
that's absolutely right. They did do that.
They did do that. Mm-hmm. You know, and like I believe this about certain organizations in sports, certain general managers, they get it. You know, and I feel there's enough of a success story. Like I remember Siakam when he played at my brother's alma mater, New Mexico State, and I remember thinking this kid's a great athlete, but you know he's going to be like a defensive specialist, you know, rebounds, putbacks, and he turned into a borderline star. So my point is, I really have faith in that front office right now. You know, I think Lowry, it was time. He's better
Definitely.
for another team.
Yeah.
You know, and Scotty Barnes, listen, I don't love Scotty Barnes over Jalen Suggs. I definitely don't. But I will, you know, when you have the record they have with drafting and building a team, and Barnes can be a difference maker without being a great offensive player. You know, I just exactly that. I kind of think they know what they're doing up there. They don't get themselves in bad spots too often. And one more thing, your guys' points are valid. I have to think we have to give them somewhat of. They played the whole year out of their home last year, and that's because of COVID. And that, you know, like the Blue Jays did it and used the same team. Baseball is not as, you know, baseball you can play. It doesn't help, but you can play on the road much more easier. Home court, you know, for an NBA team we know that it's huge. It's immense. So I do think I don't want to say give him a full pass, but that was a bit of an odd year last year. So sorry guys, I don't mean to hate you, but I'm still you know with Toronto.
Well, even if you give them a pass, they still tore the team apart.
Seriously, guys, think of it this way though: we're Knicks fans. The front office, when we had bad front, they've kept us bad for 20 years. I believe it is that important, and I think he does know what the heck he's doing up there, right? So.
Yeah, just fleece the Knicks every time you get a chance.
Yeah. Yep. But this conversation
would do it.
This conversation was thought about before Kawhi Leonard. They somehow got him to Toronto, and you know, I have enough faith that could he pull something like that again? I do. I actually do.
Yeah, it's somebody out there that's going to take the bait.
And another thing too is that like they're renowned around the league for their player development. So the point is, you know, they bring in kids who might not, like Siakam, might not be, and I think Scotty Barnes is probably going to fit in that same category. They're making these players a lot better. Like Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet is a substantially improved NBA player.
No, he is.
Right? So I think the entirety of the franchise, they remind me, team I hate, but, you know, I'll use the Patriots as an example. Like some of these franchises just know how to do this. They get rid of guys at the right time. You know, they bring in the necessary changeover when it's needed to get a fresh look. So, yeah. I'm staying with the Raptors.
Respect it. I respect it. Lastly, we spoke about the Knicks draft, but they also made some key moves, I think, this offseason. They extended Julius Randle, and they also signed a player from New York City in Kemba Walker for the season. I wanted to know how you felt about those two moves, with everything else that went on. I'm kind of on the fence about the Kemba move, but I don't know how you feel about it.
He's Kemba's biggest
Chase is
fan. He's
Yeah.
Kemba's biggest fan.
That is true. I am Kemba's biggest fan, having played against his high school way back in the day at Rice. UConn guy, but it's not bias aside. I think it's a slam dunk for them. The point is, you had granted, health is a huge question, and I mean it showed the last few years, no doubt about it. But they got a guy who was a borderline max player for 2 years at what, 10 million apiece, which in the NBA, that's nothing. I mean, so they're paying him basically a role player at best salary to come in, where his upside, I mean, they haven't had a guy who can get his own shot, I mean, literally at the point guard in years. So, I mean, if he's anything close to healthy, again, because they have Rose as well, they basically have a two-headed monster point guard, where the concern for both of them is if they play too much, it becomes an issue.
Right.
So if I look at it from that perspective, I mean, I think this literally could be the move of the offseason, in the sense that you gave up nothing to get him. They didn't hamstring themselves long-term at all, and so I love the move. And what you said about Randall as well, I think it was brilliant. Randall had a absolute monster year. And I think all of us agree, I love Randall. That's his plateau. He doesn't have a level higher than that.
Yeah, I'm thinking it gets much better than that.
They did not fall into the trap of offering him a max contract. They paid him commensurately with what a second or third option would be, only for 4 years, left flexibility on the back end of that. So I think for what they paid Randall, it was a great move for both parties. I don't want to say it was a steal, but it was good for both parties. So I love what the Knicks did. They are the exact opposite of the last 20 years. They've kept flexibility. None of these contracts are burdensome for more than a couple of years. And even if back to Kemba, if his knee doesn't hold up, it's 2 years, at 10 million per, and God knows we've had a million worse contracts than that. and I do
Bargnani.
Yeah. And you know what? I do think there is something to this. Kemba's he's a well-liked, well-respected, by players, the league, the fans. I think he's at a point in his career where he has a potential to rejuvenate his career as well now. We've seen this with other players. Going home to New York, I mean, the energy that he will bring, that the fans will feel towards him, I think this is a move you had to make, right? I mean, if it doesn't work and his knee is not the same, okay, you can move on. But again, we didn't kill the rest of our 10 years to do it. So and I'm not saying that, as you guys know, I've spent years punching TVs and a lot of things over the Knicks. I'm not waxing poetic. I really think they did a great job. They didn't bring in over the hill veterans. Nope, they brought in a guy who is an all-star point guard, granted, coming off an injury and not looking the same, for a fraction of the cost of the salaries these other guys are getting that are older than him. So I love it. I really do. I think it's a great move.
Now, do you start him or do you bring him off the bench? Because me and Chase were talking about this the other day. Chase, you feel like he should come off the bench, right? I don't want to speak for you.
Absolutely. But I think he should come off the bench. And Greg's going to differ with me on this. I think he should come off the bench as a scoring guard, not necessarily a distributor.
I'm definitely going to differ with you on this. I think because I think for multiple reasons. I think he's going to be a leader of this team as well, like an actual leader, not just points, not just his stat totals. So, I mean, again, the key to me is managing the minutes correctly, and that will be the same for him and Rose. So in reality, whether he starts or comes off the bench, he's going to play probably, 30 minutes a game or somewhere in that range. As long as they're managed correctly, I think that's the bigger concern, right? It's like, does he play all these back-to-backs? They're probably going to need to give him rest at some point. But I like the idea of him being a potential leader of this team. That's why I want him to start.
Are you not worried about him eating up Quickly's minutes between him and Rose and Barrett?
What about Quickly?
Minutes to go around?
So this is just my opinion. I think Quickly has a bright future. I honestly think this almost helps Quickly. It keeps going into the second year, the Knicks had the 4 seed this past year. The expectations are, oh, well, they have to improve on this. Reality is they could be a better team and not get the 4 seed again. They kind of maxed out their potential last year. So if Quickly comes in his second year, the old saying, the sophomore slump, and doesn't put up 22 and doesn't, well then, does he start internalize that as a failure? I think this allows him to grow further as well. He can now be, a backup option at the point, at the shooting guard. They may throw some lineups where the three of them play together for all. So I think it keeps the pressure off him. And forget the numbers. Like, I don't know if his points per game will be reflected the same as last year. I think he has the potential to become a much better basketball player, playing and learning behind Kemba and Derrick Rose. So for me, I think the long-term arrow points even higher with him learning from two guys who are, were studs.
Before we wrap this up, is there anything left we can get out of Kevin Knox?
Yeah, why did they just keep they won't move him? Is there something that they know that we don't know? Is he like KD Jr.? Like, what's going on?
KG fat.
I kind of feel for Knox. I think sometimes, whether it's the organization's fault, his fault, both, I don't even want to place blame. I think he just might be a kid right now who may need a change of scenery.
I agree.
Like this year, he's been snake bitten. They planned on him playing significant minutes in the summer league. I believe he tested COVID, or whether he tested positive for COVID or he was a close contact, so they wanted to see him, get substantial minutes to see his development. And even that didn't work out for him. So he couldn't go play summer league. I don't think there's a spot for him. I think he's talented enough where he can make a career, but I don't see what the Knicks, where does he get those minutes, right? I mean, they're going to try, and if he plays I don't see it. They want to get Obi Toppin more minutes.
Yeah.
You're not going to stunt Barrett's development.
It's rough. It's definitely rough for him.
I feel it stinks because I think Knox, can in the right spot could turn into be a player, but I don't think with the Knicks, I just don't think it's going to work.
All right, ladies and gents, this has been a very interesting and informative show. At least on my end, I don't know how about you guys feel. I want to send a big shout out to my boy Greg for being a guest expert and showing us the ways of the draft. Your expertise is invaluable to our show, and we always appreciate you, bro. Big shout out to my boy CProc for being the greatest co-host on the planet. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the contenders and pretenders and seeing if some of these teams kept their superstars happy enough to be there long term. Hit us up on our socials at Hoops Voice Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and we'll be back. Hoops Voice Pod.
Alrighty, kids, we've put together a stacked show for you this week. Now let's get some juicy, dirty laundry.
Mm-hmm.
There were several teams that were a little bit of a hot water cooler talk after the season about they have a big star, they're not particularly close to winning a championship. What can they do to appease their superstars and keep them happy while in their time in town to get them over the hump of winning a title? The first one, of course, is Damian Lillard with Portland Trailblazers. I think that may have been a little bit of media malfeasance and trying to make that into a situation that it was not. But on the same token, Portland has not done a lot to keep him happy, to keep a competent starting cast around him, whether that's health or coaching or whatever you want to blame. The other one, of course, is Dallas. That got a little bit toxic at the end. They did a lot of changes to try to keep Luka happy. Of course, he got that big contract, so maybe he's happy now. I don't know. And the third one, maybe the most unclear situation, is Zion Williamson, baby Bron down in New Orleans, and what that team can do to try to keep some grasp of a sliver of hope that he'll stay with the Pelicans and take them and maybe get them to the promised land. Yeah, rip through these any order you want. What's our thoughts on whether Portland, Dallas, and New Orleans did enough to keep their stars happy?
I'm gonna start with Portland. Dame is my guy, and it seems like they would have moved him if they could have. They probably were asking for a lot. Yeah, they probably were asking for a lot. But I hate players like when you see really good players wasting like their prime years on the team, and I hope that doesn't happen for Dame. They didn't, like you said, they didn't do a lot to improve the team. They basically like running it back with like 2 new additions. And those additions are, hold on, I'm gonna tell you right now, guys. Portland.
Cody Zeller and Tony Snell.
Cody Zeller and Tony Snell. Those aren't like severe game changers. What they need, they need another goer. Maybe they move CJ and get somebody else like a bigger body or something like that. I don't know, but I feel sorry for that team because I think by the trade deadline, if they're like an under 500 team or like barely making it into the playoffs, they're a playing team. I think Dame is going to be like, yeah, I'm done. Like I need to go somewhere where I can make a difference, where I can compete for a championship, because before I'm like 35, you know what I'm saying? And I'm out of my moment.
Yeah.
The Mavs, money heals all, right? Luka's been, there's been rumors that Luka was unhappy. KP, there's been rumors that he's unhappy. And those are your two, like, yeah, that's your 1-2 punch. You got to throw the house at Luka. Cannot let him walk. KP, on the other hand, he's been, he's hurt a lot. He's a big body that doesn't really like play big. You know what I'm saying? He's a 7'8" perimeter player. You know what I'm saying?
He's the move that should work out but never does.
Right. And
as we know, being Knicks fans.
Right. Exactly. And I think the greatest thing the Knicks done in recent history is moving KP. You know what I'm saying? Because that really started us on our path now. But I think the Mavs they're gonna bounce back. They got a good coach in Jason Kidd, who can, Luka already has basketball IQ out of this world, and Jason Kidd could even make him more sharper on that end. Maybe he can revitalize the connection between him and KP, and they'll play better. They still have Tim Hardaway Jr. We're gonna see. I think Luka and the Mavs, they could be like 4 down. You know what I'm saying? In a playoff race, and then Nola. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's just that they brought in our former boy Reggie Bullock.
Yes, they did. I hate to see Reggie go. He was part of the team that brought the excitement back to the Garden. But he landed in a good place.
Yeah, and I think to your point on Jason Kidd, it's hard to, when Luka's already putting up triple doubles, it's hard for Jason Kidd to transfer his most prominent skill onto somebody else. But I think what Jason Kidd will do is he'll help his discipline.
Yeah.
Which might even increase Luka's triple double output.
Yeah, for sure. And you look at what Jason Kidd did when he was on the Bucks, coaching Giannis. I think that was one of Giannis's best years as a pro. That kind of like started the ascent, you know what I mean, before they like got rid of J Kidd, and Budenholzer got in there. But J Kidd he's a good coach, and I think he gets a lot out of his players. And I think he's going to do the same with the Mavs. Mavs losing
he doesn't get any credit for those Bucks years.
Yeah, he doesn't, and I think he started that ascent of Giannis, like really becoming like, oh, this guy could be the best player in the league. You know what I'm saying? And there was reports that Giannis was actually a little upset when they moved on from J Kidd.
Yeah.
But since then, J.K. got another ring as a assistant coach with the Lakers. Again, coaching two great players and LeBron and AD. Although he was probably he was helping with the game plan and stuff. He wasn't the head coach, but still, he was around great talent. And now he's in a position where he could be a head coach with one of the best young stars in the league. And Luka, I think he's going to turn his team around to being like a title contender. They're missing a couple of pieces, but they're on the right path.
Yeah. Good start.
Yeah, good start. Zion and the Pelicans. This team for me, bro. They're fumbling the bag. They were doing everything right. Like they were trying to build off of their young talent. Lonzo was coming into his own over there, becoming, a better shooter. They were finally giving him the keys to offense. And then it kind of fell flat on their face in this offseason. They let Lonzo goes to the Bulls. Now, I don't know who's going to run their one over there as well as Lonzo could. They did acquire Jonas Valanciunas, which he was really good on Memphis. Gary Temple and Graham from the Hornets, who is a very good shooter, but I don't know. Things are looking a little sour over there on the Pelicans. Unless they do something major or they have a really good year next year, I don't see any player on that team wanting to stay there long term. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to be rebuilding very soon.
So you don't think that three-headed monster of Garrett Temple, Devontae Graham, and Big Jonas is enough to keep Zion happy?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
none of which are a point guard, by the way.
Yeah, none of which are a point guard. Are you going to put the ball in Zion's hands the whole game, or Ingram's hands the whole game, and just have them try to like play off each other? Or I don't know. Jonas he's a very good scorer. Don't get me wrong. Like he can go in there and get you a 20 and 10 game, 20-15 game. So I don't know. I think the Pelicans won't make the playoffs this year, or they'll be in a play-in. Like that's the vibes that they're giving me right now.
Well, I think the league knows they are struggling to make the playoffs. That's probably why they created the play-in. It still didn't work.
And it still didn't work. Yeah, man. I don't know. I think out of all these three teams, the Pelicans are probably the most in trouble of appeasing to their star.
Let's give grades. We talked off air about giving grades to some of these teams.
Oh yeah.
What do you what do you give Portland?
Portland gets a C-.
Yeah. Dallas?
Dallas could get a B.
A B, solid B.
A solid B, because you extended Luka, and he's he could be the best player in the league in a couple of years if he's not teetering that line already.
Yeah. You gotta give him some credit for convincing someone to sign a contract like that.
Right, yeah.
Although if somebody's waving $200 million in May, I don't think it would take too much convincing.
And then Nola, they get an F from me.
Which is funny because they brought in the most pieces compared to the other ones. Dallas basically re-signed people.
Yeah. Portland, like
A for effort, F for execution.
Yeah. Portland didn't do much either. They basically re-signed people too. But it's like Portland has so many holes that the cap space that they have and the players that they have on their roster, they can't make the moves that they need to make their team, as good as it needs to be to compete in the Western Conference. You got Dame and CJ, and then I don't know who you would consider their third best player. I mean,
probably
who
Nurkic.
Probably Nurkic, but he doesn't stay healthy.
Yeah, you can't really fix that team without really blowing it up.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and if you have to blow that team up, you have to bring back serious talent on the other end.
Yeah. Or all the draft picks.
Yes. all the draft picks for that one particular year.
Yeah.
You need top level talent going to compete right away.
And I mean, I think Portland's playing it the right way because they could have moved Dame this season, but it's just like, this draft wasn't really that heavy, so they're probably just going to wait until there's really like a prominent player out there that they see like, okay, we're going to target this guy, and we could use Dame and CJ to get the picks that we need in order to make sure that we land this kid or these group of kids. You know what I'm saying? So they're playing it the right way. Chauncey Billups is the head coach. Chauncey Billups is, to me, him and Dame's game are like similar. Yes. I think Dame's basketball IQ is high, but Chauncey could probably bring it out even more because Chauncey was a cerebral player. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't faster than anybody, he wasn't stronger than anybody, he wasn't taller than anybody, but he will outthink you on that court. And he was called, Mr. Big Shot. So
no, that's a great point too. Chauncey did have to get a little bit more meta than Dame because the raw talent wasn't at the level of some of these other players.
Yeah. So I think Dame underneath the guards underneath the tutelage of Chauncey Billups, whether that be Dame or CJ, I think he's going to really elevate their games. But is it going to be enough to make Dame be like, yeah, I want to stay and rough it out? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But speaking of teams that need to appease to their superstars, I want to talk about title contenders. Keeping up. Staying title contenders. It's one thing to become a contender, but you have to stay there. And every offseason, teams are trying to make moves to make their teams better and keep up with the Joneses. So there's a couple contenders I want to speak about. Me and my bro CProc. I want to talk about the Bucks, Boston, Golden State, which I feel like this team that is going to have a really good bounce back year. They're going to get all their pieces back on the board. The Hawks, which was a very surprising team last season, making it to the Eastern Conference Finals and even almost making the finals. The Clippers, which I think there were an injury off being in the Western Conference Finals. If they didn't lose Kawhi, I think they would have, possibly made it past the semis. And then the Nets, another very interesting team that has a lot of talent, and they seem to keep a majority of it. So how do we feel about these contenders and the moves that they made in order to stay contenders and maybe push them over the top?
Let's tackle Boston first. I know you've been keeping a strong eye on this contract saga of one Dennis Schroeder.
Mm-hmm. But sad boy.
Sad boy. I love Dennis Schroeder. I feel so bad. But they made some other key veteran acquisitions, I think. Brad Stevens' first year behind the curtain, pulling the strings. They bring back an aging forward center combo, Al Horford, who was there for a few years, didn't totally work out the first time around, but they bring him back. They bring in athletic young players, Josh Richardson, who's a wing player, Chris Dunn, who's kind of a tweener point guard. So I'm kind of split on whether that was a great, whether this could be considered a great haul. But on the other hand, with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, how much of a call do you really need to add to that? So maybe that wasn't, maybe it's a big splashy offseason wasn't really the thought process. Maybe it was just bringing in these solid guys that could just kind of plug the holes around them. And do those guys, Richardson, Chris Dunn, Schroeder, and Horford, do they plug the holes, or is this still kind of a work in progress?
I think the Celtics are still trying to recover from losing Gordon Hayward. He's really good for them off the bench. And they tried to plug that hole last season by bringing in Evan Fournier, and it kind of worked. But the thing that always was a hindrance to me for the Celtics as of late is their size. They're a really small team.
Oh yes.
And And they moved on from Daniel Tice and got Al Horford, but Al Horford is 6'8". You know what I'm saying? He's still not. He plays bigger than what he is, but he's only 6'8". Jason Tatum is 6'8". You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
But they did bring in two really good perimeter defenders, and Josh Richardson and Chris Dunn. And Josh Richardson is a two-way player too. He can score. So I think that's a really good pickup for them. And they still have, their core, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. So I think they're going to be very competitive in the Eastern Conference. Are they world beaters? I think they're a couple pieces away, but they can be right in the mix for top 5 spots in the Eastern Conference.
And I think having a defensive mentality going into this offseason, as far as who you acquire, is going to help with Brad Stevens' his new first head coach he's picked is Ime Udoka. And that being a former Spurs guy, spending a little time in Philly, that's someone who's obviously coming to town with a high defensive mindset.
Yeah.
So bringing in players that can support that and play that way, I think is a very good step in building this relationship between the front office and the bench. And Jaylen Brown is already an elite defender. You don't necessarily need to worry about him. Jason Tatum can kind of be a little.
He's a decent defender.
Give and go with it, And I think with having a defensive mind coach, his side piece. I know it's a weird word to call. Being an elite defender and then bringing all these other supporting characters that really dig in and grind. I think that's going to help Jason Tatum get to go, okay, I gotta do this now. I gotta play like this.
And I mean, they acquired Dennis Schroeder. He's a really good scoring guard. You know what I'm saying? He's fast as all heck. He can play make when he wants to, but his main focus is, scoring. And this team, they're gonna be able to defend and score with the best of them. But we'll see. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, I don't know. Al Horford is older, and if he's starting, how they're going to manage his minutes, I don't know. I don't know their depth as like centers and forwards go, but they're probably going to play. They're probably going to play small a lot of this year. You know what I'm saying? And just try to small ball teams to death.
And Schroeder's offense is probably a good offset to Marcus Smart's defense.
Yes, I agree. That's a good starting front court.
Yeah. Well, that would be a pretty small. You just said I don't know their sizes. That's a pretty small starting lineup because Tatum and Brown are both going to start.
Yeah.
You'd have effectively 4 wing players. Not that they haven't been doing that already, but
yeah, because Daniel Tice was 6'8" too. Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's
He wasn't 6'10" or better. Like but they do have some big bodies over there. Now that I'm thinking about it, they do have some big bodies. But we'll see, man. I would love to see it, man. I want to see the Celtics do good and become like another become a prominent team in the Eastern Conference. Just not better than the Knicks.
No. No. And they already were, so let's not.
Yeah, right.
Let's slow that. Let's slow that pace down. Another team is one that's won a lot of championships of late. That's the Warriors.
Yes, sir.
And we expected a lot in that draft. They really didn't light off the fireworks. They just kind of stuck to their guns, took those players, as we've just discussed in the previous segment. And then they bring back Kevin Looney. Okay. Andre Iguodala was a finals hero of old for them. They bring him in. They locked up Steph long term. I mean, in theory, it's Steph. So maybe they're like, okay, this is our number 1 priority. We have to make sure Steph's able to keep Steph, give him his money.
Yeah.
So if that's your thinking, like going into the offseason as pay Steph number 1 priority, okay, you accomplish it. I guess that's an A. But Steph didn't have a lot around him last year, and it doesn't seem like he's got a lot around him now. So yeah. I mean, it's just gonna. I don't know. Like, what do we think about what the Warriors did?
I think the Warriors they're happy because they're getting one of their main pieces back.
Clay.
And Clay, yeah. Splash Brother number 2. And if he can if he can play anything like himself, they're going to be a very tough team to beat. James Wiseman had a decent year last year, but I think with Clay and Steph running off screens and Draymond picking teams apart, Wiseman is going to get a lot of open opportunities, whether that's him rim running, shooting threes, shooting mid-range shots.
Putbacks.
Putbacks, yeah. Iguodala's another player that when he was on the Warriors before they, got the Hampton Five or whatever, he was another player that made that team go. You know what I'm saying? Because he could do all things on the court. He's a little older now. Bielitsa is a good pickup for them. He's a big body and he can shoot. You know what I'm saying? So I think they did pretty well, and they also set themselves up for when there's teams that's on the sellers market become on trade deadline. They got pieces that they can move to try to get somebody else. You know what I'm saying? A la Ben Simmons, if they want to move on from Clay or something like that. You know what I mean?
Bielitsa.
But we'll see, man.
I like that. I'm going to use that from now
on. I don't know. I kind of like what they did in this offseason.
Yeah. Well,
they kind of stayed put, but they actually used their draft picks. But they set themselves up, like I said, for the trade deadline if they want to move on from the players that they have and try to target somebody that they think could help them put them over the top. That's
true. And it's a good point you make on Klay Thompson. Like, this is a huge piece that's been missing for most of 2 years. That makes a difference, and you have to account for one, the minutes that he's not playing. He's just going to fill those now, and on top of the fact that his money's still there.
Yeah, his money's definitely still there.
Yeah.
I think right now, this is like a showcase for Klay. It's a showcase in two respects. Hey, Warriors, I'm still good. Keep me. Or, hey, Warriors, I'm good enough to go get you somebody that you might need to help you put you over the top. You know what I'm saying? Because if he comes in and stinks up the place or comes in and like gets hurt again, that's gonna hurt his stock, and they're just gonna have like a money pit just sitting there. You know what I'm saying? That's not playing, is eating up cap space.
This is true, and that's also something to consider with Klay. If he's not himself, but he's good enough, as much as it would hurt to see that team get broken up, they have to move on. They have to move on and get what they can for him, and that might mean eating some of that money. Because if people can tell that Klay's still decent but not Klay, they're not going to take all that money.
Nah, hell no.
But at least you free up most of it or half of it or whatever, and you can use it somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it's players out there that we've been talking about through our podcast that are like, oh, they might want to move this person. They might Ben Simmons, Bradley Beal. Like, there's players out there they could go get. You know what I'm saying? And I think Brad even Dame Dollar. You know what I'm saying? Like, if Portland wants to truly rebuild, you put Dame and Steph in a backcourt. That's I don't think they lose a beat as far as like shooting back, the best shooting backcourt in the league. They're still going to be that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they're just going to be a little bit smaller.
Talk about a splash. Talk about a splash, brother.
Yeah, like, so it's things out there that they can do, but I think for now they're just going to stay put and try to see what happens. You know what I'm saying? See how good they can be with the team that they have assembled so far.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. The Hawks, fresh off a run to the Eastern Conference Finals. First thing they did is spend a lot of money.
Yes, they did.
Gave Trae Young a major contract extension.
Ice Trae again.
Ice Trae. Ice Trae to the bank and not the bank off the glass. They re-signed John Collins, which a lot of people didn't think they were going to do.
I didn't think they were going to do that either.
Give him big money by traditional standards. Maybe not so much by the new age standards of what the players get now, but go back a few years, it's certainly big money. They brought back Solomon Hill. They got DeLon Wright, which I've always kind of been in and out on, but he's lasted this long. He's got to be worth something, right?
Yeah.
Play on words. And they drafted Sharif Cooper, who's been playing very well in the summer league. So we just talk about standing pat with the Warriors. The Hawks are really standing pat. Did they do enough to give Trey a good backup and bring back his running buddy and bring in a couple other support? Like, is that enough to keep them on pace with what they just did? Or did they kind of catch lightning in a bottle last year and they're going to go right back to where they were?
I think that the Hawks kind of their most recent playoff run is an exact representation of who they're going to be for the time coming. They still have Bodan Bogdanovic, Bogey. They still got Clint Capella, John Collins. They added Sharif Cooper. They have Danilo Gallinari. Kevin Huerter played very well in this playoffs. DeAndre Hunter is one of my favorite players on this team. Cam Reddish is as well. They both got hurt in this playoff run, and they were focal points of their team during their last successful season. They got Lou Will still. I think this team is still going to be a very good team. And now they're going to have a full year with their new head coach, and Trey got his confidence up. He probably feels if he didn't roll his ankle in that Eastern Conference Finals, they would be in the finals. And I think there's a lot of people that probably feel that way. I think they did really good by staying pat and re-signing the people that made them successful, and then adding little pieces here and there. And then when DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish come back 100%, they're going to be a tough team to face every night.
That's true. And there is something to be said for continuity. Especially
for sure.
with also keeping continuity with bringing back Nate McMillan on a full-time basis. That you do need to keep that back, and the injuries are big because you're right. DeAndre Hunter is huge for them. Cam Reddish is huge. Cam Reddish practically missed the whole season. That's a big piece that they didn't have, and now it's kind of not to the extent of Klay Thompson, but in a similar light, this is a significant piece of the team that wasn't there, and now they're back. So standing pat is definitely in their case is definitely a reason, especially because they're on the come up. They're not like this Warriors team that's used to winning all the time, and now they've fallen off. It's like, oh God, what do we do? Is it time to hit the panic button yet? The Hawks are still kind of on the come up a little bit. So I think continuity is very important in scenarios like that, because you could get halfway up, like previously talking about with the old Thunder before they blew that up. You could get a team on the come up. It's almost there. You blow it up, and then, where are we now? It starts to scratch again. Is that worth it? Is it worth having a few years of almost there and not knowing if you're gonna get there, or having a few years of really doo-doo and and not knowing when you're gonna get back to almost there?
Right.
Almost there sucks, but it's better than doo-doo.
This is definitely better than doo-doo. I mean, we've been rummaging through the doo-doo for a long time as Knicks fans. But yeah, and as well as, like I said, the Atlanta Hawks, they have a lot of talent on that team, and they also put themselves in a position that, again, when teams are in sell mode, and they feel like there's a player out there that can put them over the top, they can go out and get him. They have the assets to do that. So we'll see, man. I hope they don't do as well as the Knicks, but this is a really good assembled team.
Next team, one that we're expected a lot out of, disappointed our playoff insider Shannon Gregg quite a bit over the course of our playoff episodes. The Clippers. They made sure they kept Kawhi, so I guess in a certain light, the Aussies will win one way or the other. But they also brought back a lot of the guys. They brought back Nick Batum. They brought back Reggie Jackson. They bring in kind of disappointment Justice Winslow. Maybe they can get something out of him. I don't know. I don't know if anyone was capable of getting something out of Justice Winslow, hopefully. What do we think about the Clippers? Was this another situation where just stand pat, keep the pieces in place, or was there something they need to do that they didn't do and it was a failure?
Well, the Clippers was another team, like most teams in the playoffs last year or this year, that was struck by the injury bug. They didn't have Serge Ibaka. He was hurt. Kawhi went down. I think they did right by re-signing Reggie Jackson. He was playing out of his mind for the whole playoffs.
Yeah.
And he was on a veteran minimum. So, like, they did right by re-signing him. Kawhi, I don't know how I feel about, like, Kawhi took a pay cut, right? But you still extended him. I don't know if he's a player that you want to extend long term. You know what I'm saying? First of all, he's going to load manage for the whole season.
Yeah.
And then he might mess around and get hurt. So it's like, we load managing you. You know what I'm saying? You're playing like 70 to 75% of the games. And then you get hurt in the playoffs where you were saving all this energy.
Right. And if you're going to get hurt anyway, why not just go all out? Screw the load manage. Go all in the season. If you get hurt, you get hurt. But at least you give us a better seed and maybe an easier first round.
Right.
Imagine if they could have gone against, the Pelicans or the Grizzlies or whoever in the first round instead of having to go against Luka.
Right. And, they were playing from behind every series they were in, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Playing from behind, trying to come back and win. And, that team on paper is too good to be doing that, I feel. But one of the positives as well was the play of Paul George in the playoffs. He really looked like himself again. You know what I mean? We didn't get the, pandemic P. We got playoff P. So if he's able to keep up that level of play, and Leonard, his knee is okay, you know what I'm saying? And Reggie can play like how he was playing in the playoffs, and they get Serge back, and they still got the Morris twin. You know what I mean? They can make some noise, man. They're still going to be a very solid team. We just got to see how it happens when they put everything together.
And another team that high expectations that didn't necessarily get to where a lot of people thought they were are thorn in our side, the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
Now they got KD to come back, lock in long term, gave him a boatload of money. But other than that, now the Nets, as we've talked in past episodes, a lot of their success is just them staying healthy. And they're not a situation like with Klay Thompson where they were missing a piece and just waiting for him to come back.
Right.
They've had these pieces. It's just a matter of them all staying on the court at the same time. It's going to be easy to say their success just hinges on that. But in the event that it doesn't, and in the event that they're all getting into the latter half of their careers now, they need some spells, is bringing back Blake Griffin, is bringing in Patty Mills, wonderful grinder from the Spurs, bringing in players like that, re-signing Bruce Brown. Is that enough to kind of give them insurance? Considering they lost Dinwiddie. Now, granted, Dinwiddie got hurt pretty early last year, so he didn't really have an effect on last year's team. But
he didn't play at all.
Assuming that was still a piece that could have come back and helped them, they didn't bring him back. Did they do enough to give them insurance in case last year happens again and they can't get the three guys on the court at the same time for more than 10 games?
I kind of like what the Nets did. I didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign Blake Griffin, but he wants to win, so he took less money. Their signing of Bruce Brown is big. He was a hell of a player for them all last season. Them getting James Johnson, he's a very good player, a very good two-way player. Patty Mills is a big signing for them. You know what I mean?
I like
that right there is the Kyrie insurance. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
James Harden, if he's healthy, he's going to be the point guard on that team. Even if Kyrie's there, you know what I mean?
That's
he's going to be the person with the ball in his hand mainly. Patty Mills is a phenomenal shooter. So he can spot up and space the floor for them. I think they did just fine, man. They don't have a lot of money to go out and get super big names, but they did right by re-signing the players that they had on their roster and go getting a quality pickup like James Johnson and Patty Mills. They extended Durant, best player in the universe in my eyes, and he got big money. So
there were a lot, as we've run through quite a bit of them already. There were just a lot of extensions this year, a lot of just money getting thrown out for long term.
Ching ching.
Yeah, that did happen. And this wouldn't be right this wouldn't be right if we didn't round it out with going over the champs. Now, controversially to what I just said and what we've been talking about, they didn't need to lock any of their stars up. Giannis is already locked up long term. Chris Middleton's already locked up long term. They didn't need to do any of that. But they need to kind of here they are. They've got the title now. They need to kind of maintain status quo. And PJ Tucker, I bust his chops all the time because he's kind of a bum and a little bit of a goon. But so they lose him, but he did contribute. Whatever he contributed last year, he contributed.
He did.
And they lost him. That's a lot of toughness gone. But Bobby Portis, another big toughness player. They bring him back.
Yeah.
Go on and get some more toughness. Rodney Hood's a guy that's kind of bounced around a little bit, never really found a home. But he's kind of a little bit of a tough perimeter player. They bring him in. Chimmy Ojale, not a guy that got a ton of minutes in Boston, but what he did, he got on the court and he played hard. They bring him in. Grayson Allen, really annoying, tenacious type of perimeter defender. Played, I think, pretty darn well on the Grizzlies opposite Ja. And
yeah, he did.
They brought him in. Like, that's a lot of toughness that you already infused to a team that had a lot of toughness already. Is this like enough to maintain status quo and get them back to the finals?
So this team is a very, they're not like the traditional like new NBA team. You know what I'm saying? They don't have like they have one of the most dominant players in the NBA in Giannis. They have one of the best, if not the best, perimeter defender in Drew Holiday. And then Chris Middleton is poor man's KD. You know what I'm saying?
And a wonderful defender in his own right.
And he's a wonderful defender in his own right. I think them losing PJ Tucker is it's kind of like a big loss because if you were watching the playoffs, every team they win against, he was guarding their best perimeter player in crucial moments. So them having Drew Holiday guard him for a couple of plays and then switch PJ Tucker on him, I think, and then switching Chris Middleton on him, I think that was like, it made it tough for opposing teams against them. But they're gonna get Dante DiVincenzo back. He went down last season with an injury, but he's a really good two-way player. Pat Connaughton is a really good player. They got George Hill. They're gonna be okay. You know what I mean? Everybody healthy, Milwaukee Bucks, they're still gonna be a solid team because, they have a good group, good coaching staff. They're gonna be 1 through 4 in the Eastern Conference, and then they're gonna make some noise in the playoffs. But I don't know. I don't know if they get back to the mountaintop.
Well, I think they have the fewest question marks of the teams on the top right now in the East, especially considering the fact that what was their biggest question mark for so long? Can they win? Well, it's not a question mark anymore.
Yeah.
So considering that they didn't have to lock up any stars, they have a good reserve cast. They brought in some new good reserve players. I think I'd venture into being unoriginal and pencil them in as a potential championship pick right now because I don't see a lot of holes that they have as long as they just keep on keeping on, as they say. I think they'll be okay. I like these kind of lesser known players that they brought in to kind of support roles and personalities on a team that they already do exceptionally well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I like the Bucks, man.
Grades. Boston.
Grades.
What do we give Boston?
Boston, I give them a B+.
B+.
Yeah.
I can respect that. That's good.
You agree with that? Yeah.
Golden State.
Golden State. I think they're playing a long game, so they could get a solid B from me.
B.
Yeah.
I might go B- at most.
B-?
Yeah, because I'm someone that loves building to the draft, but at the same time, their window is a little smaller with not knowing what goes on with Clay, with Steph getting up there in years. They did kind of I was expecting more of a win now procedure with those draft picks, and obviously they were not the case, and they were looking long term. So I'm honestly thinking that you might be onto something. Maybe they know something the rest of us don't with Clay.
Yeah.
That if he comes back, he's not going to be Clay. I think you're onto something with that, and if that rings true, and they know that moving him could free up a lot of the future. And okay, we've got Steph. Let's just try to figure out what to make it work with Steph in case we do have to blow this up.
Right, and they got Steph locked in long term. So
right,
yeah.
So I might go B- or C+, just because that's kind of like if I'm being an optimist B-, I'm being a pessimist B+, C+.
Right, C+, yeah.
Yeah, because I there's something there that I think you're onto that that if you are onto it, then there's a serious concern there, and I don't know if the moves they did support that kind of gray area, if you will.
Yeah.
Hawks.
Dang, I feel like the Hawks did good, man.
I think they did too.
Yeah, I'll give them a B+ as well.
Yeah, I might give them an A-.
A-?
Yeah.
Hey,
I might give them an A- because a lot of people didn't know. They know John Collins better than anybody else. A lot of people didn't know if they're going to bring him back. If they throw $100 million at him, obviously he must have been worth bringing back and committing to. So again, the injury players back, giving money to Trey, giving money to John Collins. Sharif Cooper looks really good. I think.
Yeah.
I'll give them an A-. I think. Yeah. I think they did all right. They didn't do a lot. They didn't do anything crazy, but they solid moves and as we talked about, players coming back off injury.
And to be fair, like you said, they didn't do anything crazy. They didn't really need to do anything crazy. They have a lot of talent on that team already. They just needed everybody to be available. And, start of this new season, they're going to have everybody available. And Nate McMillan got re-signed as well. So he's going to be there long term. He's going to have a training camp with them, his first training camp with the Hawks. I think they're going to be a very tough team in the Eastern Conference.
I would not be shocked if they're more committed to defense next year. Because that's
for sure.
Because that's Nate McMillan's game.
Yeah.
Clippers.
C+.
Yeah, I agree. C+.
Yeah. Yeah.
Smart moves, but nothing that puts them over the top, which they kind of needed.
Especially with what their building buddies just did.
Yes. Yes.
And the Lakers, yeah.
Builder Bob. New Jersey. Whew, look at me. The Nets. Brooklyn. What do we got?
Showing your age there.
Yes. I wish they'd go back to New Jersey. Get out of my city. Well, I guess it's not my city anymore, but it was my city.
Yeah. The Nets. I like the re-signing of Blake Griffin and the addition of Patty Mills to already a team that has a lot of talent. They also re-signed Bruce Brown, which I think he was a really good player for them, and then picking up James Johnson. I'll give them guys an A.
B+.
B+?
Because I agree. I like the moves that they did. And I like that they locked up KD, even though I kind of didn't want to see him stay there.
Yeah, me neither.
Selfishly.
Yeah.
But that being said, considering how much their team is reliant on the three big players being on the court together at the same time and staying healthy, I can't give them a lower grade or failing grade. So I don't want to give him an A, but I'll give him a B, maybe even a B+. If I'm feeling swifty. What do we got on the Bucks, the champs?
The Bucks did all right. You know what I mean? And like you said, like a lot of these teams didn't do anything. Didn't do anything too major. And I think the Bucks they stayed pat. They added some new talent, but I think them losing PJ Tucker is big. I'll give them a C.
C. Oh,
Yeah.
you are not kind, sir. I'm gonna raise that quite a bit. I'm gonna give them an A- because I think PJ can be. I think Bobby Portis can get more minutes, and Chemi, the addition of Chemi, and the two of them can replace PJ Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. And then they get two more, and they get those two extra perimeter players too. So I think for considering relative limited amount of flexibility they had to do anything and what they didn't have to worry about, I think all things considered, they kind of knocked it out of the park as much as they can for minimal acquisition for minimal things being all that they needed. So I'll give them an A-. Now we've hinted at this all show. Let's actually get into it and unbox our beloved Knicks. We got a bunch of our contributors back from last year. We extended Randall. We get Kemba Walker a little bit on the cheap. Did we do enough? Did we just create a big log jam of guards, considering what we wrote back, what we already have? Like, what's the vibe on our beloved orange and blue?
I think us bringing in Kemba Walker is it's a good story. He's a hometown hero. He had a pretty pedestrian year last season, just due to injury. He never really bounced back from that knee procedure he had, due to how short of an off season they had, and they restarted. He never really bounced back. They then sent him to the Thunder, and he didn't want any parts of it, so he got bought out, and now he's on the Knicks.
Didn't want any parts of it.
I love Kemba Walker, but I don't think the addition of him is going to make us that much better. I hope and pray that he doesn't hamper what we were building here with our young guards. But we see. I love that we extended Randall and he took a little pay cut. You know what I'm saying, to help us out.
He did.
To help us out.
He did. Which the Knicks are not known for pay cuts, so that's good.
Yeah.
Then we're not known for going cheap on big contracts.
And we did lose Reggie Bullock, but we did re-sign Burks, Nerlens. We re-signed Derrick Rose. So I think those are all big re-signs. And then we also signed Evan Fournier, who's a really good scorer.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what's your take on Fournier? How do you feel about him coming in?
I like it. I do, and I don't want to be too sour on Kemba Walker. I think it showed in the playoffs that we were really too one-dimensional. We relied on Randall way too much. And once the teams figured out he only likes to go one way, or he likes to shoot this shot, and they were really shutting him down. And we didn't have anybody to else to take that pressure off of him. We added some guys that can help out, and Kemba Walker and Evan Fournier. So we'll see, man. We just got to hang our hat on defense, and whatever happens offensively happens.
Now, I will say, to share / alleviate some of your concern about Kemba, I think it's a lot his success with the Knicks, I think a lot depends on how big his role is going to be. If we're planning on starting him, I think that might be a problem, because that's getting away from RJ, from Quickly, from I don't think Peyton's coming back, but whatever we do with Rose, that's kind of getting away from this developmental trend we've been on. I think if we just go into this Kemba area with the mentality that he could just come off the bench, be a little quick pop of points off the bench, I think that'll be okay. But I think it all depends on what role he's going to play. If we're relying on him to be a superstar, then we're probably asking a lot, and it's not going to be successful. If we just kind of use him as someone who could come in as a burst of energy and points, and maybe even a clutch score down the stretch at the end of close games, which Lord knows we've struggled with. Yeah. I think it could be okay.
Yeah, I just don't. Because if we do start him, what does that say? What does that do to Emmanuel quickly? You know what I'm saying? Because probably the back. If we do start Kimba, the backup to him is going to be Rose, right?
Yes.
And then Emmanuel quickly is kind of going to become like this fringe player that gets spot minutes at either guard position, but he's not going to have like a really significant role. And I like what he was doing for us last season. I think he's only going to continue to get better. And I just pray that, you know, the addition of Kimba helps us more than it hurts us. And it's like, you know, it's a 1-year rental. We'll see how he works out, and then he'll go on and do, you know, other things, or he might stay. Who knows? All right, ladies and gents, that completes this episode of Hoop Voice Pod. A lot of off-season action this year. Some things great, some things not so great, but hopefully you enjoyed this show. If you want to talk some more off-season, hit us up at Hoops Voice Pod at both Instagram and Twitter, and let us know how you feel about the additions some of your favorite teams made this season. But until next time, this has been the Hoops Voice Pod. Peace.
Kobe.